but it's just, the flashing. We're going live. Well, let's see how this. Yeah, let's see how this works out. But let me see if the live stream is going.
Welcome to SteeleWatching, which is a podcast for Remington Steele fans. My name is Sara, and I am now the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
What was that, 43?
42.
42. Okay.
I just turned 42. So for those of you who don't know, if you've ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the characters are searching for the answer to life, the universe, and everything, and they are told the answer is 42. So that's me for a whole year.
It's been a long time since I've read that, so I was close, but not quite. And I am Eric. I am the other host, and I'm past the answer to the universe.
You are no longer the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Yes. Anyway.
Yeah. And was there anything we wanted to do first before we get into the episode? We have a new subscriber, don't we?
We do have a new subscriber, and we do want to. I forgot to put that in my notes. Thank you for reminding me. Yes. Thank you, new subscriber. We appreciate the support. It goes a long way to helping cover the costs. We still haven't done it, but we're getting closer to being in the hole.
We're working on it. We're getting there.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. We do appreciate the support, folks.
Absolutely. Okay, see, I was delaying because today we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 4, Second Base Steele, and I am going to mangle this. So I officially apologize to anybody who is a baseball fan. This one really should be hosted by Eric. I think he's just letting me take it just to laugh and mock.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It just
this is going to be like, picture if Mr. Steele was calling a baseball game. This is what that episode is, or that's what this episode is going to be like. If it were a hockey episode, I'd have this.
Well, I was going over my my notes for this and looking at the next episode that's coming up, and I've noticed that I keep getting all the European episodes, so I guess it kind of balances out. You get the baseball, I keep getting Europe. So anyway.
Yeah. So I apologize for any and all baseball mistakes I am about to make. They will be numerous. But this is in my defense. It is not my sport. I don't hate it. I'm Canadian. That's my excuse. This episode first aired October 23rd, 1984. And it was written by a name I haven't heard of yet, Rick Middleman, and directed by Don Weiss. So it's a new writer or at least a writer that I don't recall us mentioning yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. I'll agree.
So I went with the TV Guide synopsis, which was Steele and Laura go undercover at an adult baseball camp when a reunion of high school athletes is plagued by a series of accidents, and that's in air quotes. Hall of Famers Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford appear as themselves. The only issue I have with this synopsis is that, and I don't know how else you would say this, but saying adult baseball camp makes it sound like something Lord Marchmain would write about. I'm not sure how else you would say a camp for, maybe if they said a camp for adults, maybe that would have worked a little better.
or summer baseball camp for fantasy, something other than that.
I don't know, fantasy camp for adults makes it sound even worse.
Well, okay. And I'll refrain from making a joke about baseballs and bats.
There you go. So I that's the only issue I had with that. Anyway,
and whatever we can get away with,
Yeah, insert numerous ball and bat jokes.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess we open on a baseball field called the Golden Dugout, and we see a group of men playing on the field, and the bleachers are kind of sparsely populated with onlookers. The batter at the plate yells at them to look alive, and they shout a number of baseball-related phrases at each other. That's what I have in my notes, because, yeah. I don't even know what you'd call that, but they're like, hey, batter, go bat. I don't know. Hit the thing, do the thing. That's what I hear. And go sports.
Yeah. Okay.
This is going to be a lot of this. So yeah, that's what we're seeing. Batter, the batter hits the ball, and another man in green, presumably the coach, sarcastically says, "Now, if they just so as aren't." I don't know who half these people are. The only reason I know who Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford are is because when you see them with the names on their backs. To be honest, I don't know if this is one of them. It might be. This is why I need your help.
Okay. Let's see. At the beginning, the guy who does the hollering, he's the guy with the bat up at the plate. And he is
I said that. I got that.
Okay, which guy are you referring to then?
Oh, the one that sarcastically says, now if they just sew his arm back on or something.
Okay. Okay. That's Whitey Ford.
Was that Whitey Ford? Okay.
Yeah. Now, okay, let me okay,
They're
let's
both
do,
guys with white hair.
back up. First
See,
of all,
this is why you should be taking this episode.
No, you do such a fine job. First of all, the script, it's interesting because apparently Mickey Mantle had already been at least somewhat tied down. In the script, there's a note on that line in particular. The note is the likes of Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle needling from the sidelines of the well-manicured Major League training complex. So Mickey Mantle seems like it was a lock at that point. Whitey Ford, not so much. They were throwing out Willie Mays' name. I think it would have been cool if they'd have gotten Mays because he was always my guy. But Whitey Ford was a pitcher. He was nicknamed the chairman of the board. He played 16 years in the major leagues, all for the New York Yankees, which these days playing all of your career for one baseball team is not particularly common. But back then it was a little more so. He was a 10-time All-Star, 6-time World Series champion. In 1961, he won both the Cy Young Award and the Most Valuable Player Award in the World Series. The Cy Young Award is a pitcher's award that's given to the outstanding pitcher of the year. So he won that, and he was also the most valuable player in the World Series that year. And he led the American League 3 times for wins and earned run average twice. He was the franchise leader for the Yankees in career wins, shutouts, innings pitched, and games started by a pitcher. He was inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1974 and died in October of 2020 at the age of 91.
Oh, wow.
Mickey Mantle was a well-respected batter. His fielding was, I think, considered average, but very well-respected batter. And again, he played his entire career with one team, the New York Yankees. He was regarded by many as being one of the best players and certainly one of the best sluggers of all time. And despite a career plagued with injuries, he became one of the greatest offensive threats in baseball history, and he's the only player to have hit 150 runs from both sides of the plate. I think he was by default a right-hander, but he would hit right-handed or left-handed depending on the circumstances, and he was the only player, at least up till the time of this record, to have done 150 home runs from both sides. So that's kind of unusual. He hit 536 career home runs while batting 300 or more 10 times. He's 16th in the all-time home runs per bat and 17th in on-base percentage. He won the Triple Crown in 1956, which means that he...
That's horse racing, isn't it?
Won... No. Well,
the Kentucky Derby,
they use that as... Okay. They use that as there as well,
very confused.
But for baseball, it generally refers to the batting achievement of leading the league in batting average, home runs, and runs batted in over the same season. So he had a batting average of 353, 52 home runs, and 130 runs batted in that season. He was an all-star for 16 seasons. He had a .984 fielding percentage when playing center field and won a Gold Glove in that position. Appeared in 12 World Series and holds the World Series records for the most home runs, 18, most runs batted in, 40, most extra base hits, 26, most runs, 42, most walks, 43, and a total number of bases, 123. And he also has the highest World Series on base and slugging percentages and was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1974. So these two guys, they weren't the absolute best in baseball as far as, some people might consider them. But these two guys were no slouches. They were big-time baseball players. So.
It's interesting, the comment. See, I knew I could count on you for all of that because I was just like, I know their names and I know they played baseball and I know they were rather good because I know their names. So that's pretty much all I knew. But it's interesting that you made that comment about how it's unusual to play for one team your entire career. And I'm going to make a lot of hockey analogies here because it's the only way I can, grasp my head around it.
I'll forgive you.
It's a very similar thing with hockey. You don't get a lot of, especially since the league expanded in 1967, you don't get a lot of players that play exclusively for one team. But one that I can think of that's a modern player is he stopped playing last year because of a number of injuries and some other stuff. But Carey Price played for the Montreal Canadiens for his entire career as a goaltender and is widely regarded as one of the greatest goaltenders in the game. So similar to that, played for just the one team, but did a lot of stuff in his time. So, but I knew I could count on you for all the baseball stuff.
Well, in baseball, one of the reasons why it used to be pretty, I'm not going to say pretty common, but a lot more common than it is these days is because of something called the reserve clause, which basically the owners of the teams and baseball in general had interpreted as being, well, we reserve you for the next year forever. So you can never move to another team unless we trade you. And then in the late 70s, I believe, there was a situation that allowed the players to enforce something called free agency, which essentially broke that reserve clause, meaning that after so many years, a player was free to sell his services to any other team if he couldn't come to an agreement with the team he was already signed to. And so that changed the whole dynamic there. So from that point on, it was pretty uncommon for a player to stay with one team their entire career. I'm not sure that any player has done so since then. There are some who have not done a lot of moving. Ken Griffey Jr. is one that spent most of his career at Seattle. He wound up playing, I'm trying to remember now where he played. He played somewhere else for a couple of years, and then he came back and ended his career in Seattle. But in baseball, it was a little bit different situation because under the reserve clause, basically a team owned a player. He was basically a virtual slave to the owner of the team at that point, and it could only be moved to another team if the owner decided to trade him. So anyway.
Okay, so now we know stuff about the players. A little bit of labor industry.
Yeah. A little bit of labor history.
I appreciate that because, like I said, I just had Guy in Green sarcastically says, because I wouldn't know them if they hit me over the head with a baseball. So later on, they have their names on the back of their shirts. So I was like, oh, yeah, that's that guy and that's that guy. But yeah. So I had to pay. So anyway, we see two women in the stands, presumably the wives of some of the players, and they wonder if they can survive a week of this. The batter hits the ball again. It flies towards the man in the outfield. The woman yells at Sam, which is one of the men in the field, to go and get it. He runs toward it, only to nearly be crushed by the floodlights as they topple over. The men gather around the lights, stunned and more than a little scared. So that's the opening scene. We got through it. Yay. So then we get a scene change. It's morning, And Laura and Steele both step off different elevators at the office at the same time. He looks exhausted, and she sort of gently chides him for being up a bit early. And as they walk toward the office, Steele sees something at the end of the hall. I like this bit. He says, "Didn't we pay off those little uniformed extortionists last week?" And Laura's surprised at his attitude towards Little League. She says she always supports the local team. And he wonders aloud if their check bounced. Laura's eye is drawn to the grown man standing there in a baseball uniform. I need to make a confession here. I don't get baseball pants. So I belong to another fan group. Okay. And this is for another TV show. And a bunch of women in the fan group were going on about baseball pants. They seem to think baseball pants are like the sexiest thing in the world. I don't get it. Someone needs to explain this to me. Anyway, just had to put that out there.
I don't know. Maybe just the cut of them makes them. I don't know.
If anyone listening can explain to me the allure of a man in baseball pants, please do, because I not that they're hideous or anything, I just don't get it. Anyway. He's standing there, he's in a baseball uniform, and Steele is not too, he's kind of giving him the eye. Inside,
it makes me wonder if, he talks about the extortionist, the little uniformed extortionist. What was I can understand Girl Scouts. Okay. They're selling cookies. What was it that these Boy Scouts were there doing? Were they just getting donations and sponsorships for the outfield fence or something?
I know that my parents used to own a diner, and they would often pay some money towards like sponsoring, like you get the name of your business put on the back of the uniform or whatever, but you also help them buy their uniforms and their equipment and stuff. So it could just be for that, I imagine.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm guessing Steele is a little bitter about it because he doesn't get cookies, right? Like he just, the money, I get it. I mean, at least the Girl Scouts, they get cookies. You have cookies. Yeah. There's no cookies here. Yeah. So inside, Steele is unimpressed by the location of the case. Laura, though, her face lights up. She immediately recognizes the Golden Dugout as that baseball camp for adults run by the LA Sluggers. Now, is that a real...
No.
Are the LA Sluggers?
Not
okay,
a real team.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure.
I'm not going to say that there isn't some team somewhere named the Sluggers, but not that I'm aware of. It's certainly not a major league team.
It's interesting because this is the second time that they've made up a fictitious professional team. Because before with the hockey cheerleaders, we had the LA Owls, which are not a team that exists. Like we had them as well, and I wonder.
Right.
I don't know. There can't be rights issues associated with mentioning a team, is there? Or
yeah, there are, because Major League Baseball and the teams own the names, the iconography. Sorry, finally got the word out there. Everything about the teams. So, for example, there was a big stink a number of years ago where Little League teams were wearing uniforms that had the names and the logos of some Major League teams, and Major League Baseball came down on them. And so they had to get away from doing that because it was a trademark. So yeah, they would have to have gotten somebody to sign off on using the name of a real team. And I imagine there would have been money involved, and somebody, the legal departments for MLB and for the team mentioned would be involved. And, in these types of things, it doesn't take much. Just one guy to say, "Well, I don't like that. They're making us look bad," or well, we're worth a ton of money just to have our name mentioned. We're giving you free publicity. Well, we want to be paid for that free publicity. It doesn't take much. So, yeah.
That's fair. Do you know if camps like this actually exist? Like, are there real places where you can, play baseball or play hockey or play whatever sport with like professional athletes that?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I I thought I had it in my notes. I may have later on. I don't remember. But yes, I believe Mickey Mantle was, in fact, one of the people involved in fantasy, baseball camps for the Yankees that they held down in Florida. So yeah, they are a real thing. I don't know, or at least they were at one point. I don't know if they still are or not, but could be.
I imagine it would be difficult. Like, obviously, this would be players that have retired from the game, because you couldn't have active players who doing that as well as like training and stuff like that. But even still, it would probably take up a lot of time and effort.
Oh yeah, so, here it is.
Yeah.
No, we'll get to that. Okay. We'll get to that. But yes. It's coming up in my notes, but we're not there yet. But yes, there are real things like that.
So the man that's sitting in the office is Mr. Kelsey, and he tells him that it's his high school teammates at the camp for a reunion rubbing elbows with some of the greats like Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford. Steele asks what they can do for them. Kelsey tells him that they want to close the camp for the rest of the team's session. Laura seems genuinely disappointed and asks why. He tells them that there have been 2 suspicious accidents. Nobody's been hurt, but the management thinks that it might be someone pulling pranks. He says 1 more strike and they're out. Laura wonders why anyone would want to sabotage the camp. Mr. Kelsey seems equally skeptical, but wants Mr. Steele to hang around incognito in order to make sure everything is okay. Steele wonders why he's going to so much trouble for a game. This is... You don't say this to anybody who is really passionate about a sport. Like, I know better than this. I do it sometimes with my husband when he starts watching darts. Okay, when you start watching darts, then there's gonna be a little mockery, but like, seriously, like, obviously Kelsey is offended by this. He says it's not just a game, it's a way of life, it's America. Steele doesn't seem to get it.
Can I jump in there?
Yep.
Because that's how it was filmed. That was how it was written. And it's I have an issue with how that was written just from that standpoint, because it's a little bit condescending to people who are fans of sports. It portrays them as being kind of mindless, and belittling of people who have a love for sports. And I agree. Sometimes people go a little bit overboard on it, but I really, really prefer, and because it's very demeaning to his character. It turns him into kind of an idiot, so to speak. I like the way it was written in the earlier draft, at least 1 month before air is the date that we've got. And his response to Steele's question about, aren't you going to an awful lot of trouble just to preserve a game? His response was, I'm a successful man by most standards, but recently I realized that the best times of my life were spent in high school, standing on a baseball diamond, surrounded by my buddies, pretty girls in the stands. Life was exciting, full of promise. Maybe I'm just a nostalgic fool, but some of my old teammates have gathered from all over the country to be here for 1 week. It's probably the last time we'll ever be together, and I don't want anything to jeopardize it. And to me, that portrays him entirely differently, because as originally written, he states he's a successful man, but from what he's saying, he qualifies that by saying by most standards. And so to me, we're seeing a guy who is, from the entirety of the statement, he's a sad, flawed man whose life seems to him to have failed to live up to hopes and expectations. And he wants to recapture the dreams by reliving the time in his life when those dreams were possible. I mean, he didn't achieve them. And by going back and reliving this thing, he can say, man, I had these dreams. They were great dreams. I didn't get them, but I love those dreams. And to me, it makes the character real. I mean, we all know somebody that this describes, people who probably at some time or another have felt this way. And, we don't typically go to these sorts of extremes to try and deal with those feelings. But to me, the original speech made him a more sympathetic character, whereas what we got, he's kind of a dork.
No, you know what? I actually think that when you pointed out that way that people look at either sports fans, or my mind immediately went to Comic-Con, right? People that go to comic conventions, that dress up in cosplay, that write fan fiction, that have a love for something. It doesn't have to be a sport. It could be anything, right? A fandom, any sort of activity or hobby or whatever. I joked about the darts, but in all seriousness, like if you're passionate about something, like I hate this habit we have as a culture of sort of mocking people for their passions, because so many people don't have them, right? So many people, when they become an adult or they get a job and they get responsibilities, they sort of let all of that fall to the wayside, or they tell themselves, well, I'm an adult now. I can't be spending my time doing this. This is silly. I can't be collecting comic books, or like my husband and I just had birthdays.
Or doing podcasts about 40-year-old TV shows.
About a TV show, yeah. You know what my husband gave me for my birthday? He gave me Freddy Krueger's glove with the knife hands.
Okay.
On a stand that is now, there is a severed hand on my desk with knives for hands. Okay. Because I love horror movies and that's my favorite franchise. And I gave him a little miniature He-Man sword and a little miniature Skeletor sword from Masters of the Universe. He just turned 46. We are grown adults, and we are giving each other severed hands with knives and little swords. Like, it would be easy to mock that, but these are things that gave us joy when we were younger, or still do. And I don't think that is necessarily something anyone has to apologize for. So I agree what you mean when you say when Steele, like, his comment is not very nice. Like, it's a passion that this guy has. He shouldn't have to explain it, right? Like, he shouldn't have to give an explanation as to why he loves this thing, especially since he's come to them for help. Like, he's coming to them saying, like, I'm going to pay you to investigate this thing. And Steele's basically going, yeah, but is it really worth it? Like, even if it wasn't, the amount of money that I'm assuming that these camps charge to attend these weeks.
I imagine it's big bucks.
For that reason alone, I would be wanting my money's worth. I wouldn't want to be getting my...
Not only do you have the cost of the camp itself, but let's say you're there in a week. And for a baseball camp, that's going to be in summer, tourist season. So you've got hotel rates at tourist rates.
Flights.
You've got car rental at tourist rates. You've got your eating expenses, maybe at tourist rates. Most restaurants, I don't think, raise their prices for tourists. But, you've got all these other expenses that go along with it. It's not just the cost of the camp. There's some serious money being spent here.
Oh, for sure.
and to demean Kelsey by having him say, well, it's more than a game. It's a way of life. It's America. I mean, that's... Yeah, unfortunately, whoever wrote that line was also, like Mr. Steele, a bit demeaning.
Yeah, it is a bit of a silly. I agree. They're probably trying to sort of shorthand what baseball means to many Americans, but it does kind of come off a bit flippant and a little silly. But I guess for timing reasons, that's why they did it. Although I will say Laura seems to understand a little bit more so than Steele, and I don't think it's. I think it makes sense that Steele doesn't understand the allure of baseball. He's not American. He didn't grow up there. It's not his game. Soccer would be the equivalent for him, right?
Yeah. And all that is explained fantastically in the next line, where after Laura makes her comment, Steele says, well, I may not have played Miss Holt, but I'm a keen observer of your national pastime. When do we kick off?
When do we kick off? Exactly. Right. And
which fits into your earlier theory that he doesn't know anything about sports when we were in Dreams of Steele, and he gets them all confused.
I genuinely think, even though he grew up in Britain, he probably doesn't really follow the footy either. He probably just kind of, growing up there, you would at least absorb some knowledge about it, right? It's kind of like, even if you don't watch hockey in Canada, you understand more about hockey than you would say about anything else, because it's just always on. But he doesn't. When do we kick off? It's like shooting hoops. That comment about shooting hoops earlier in season 1.
Is it a small bird?
So I do think that part of it was fairly well done. I enjoyed that. yeah, Laura helpfully chimes in that he's never played baseball. So that's when Kelsey kind of regards him with more renewed suspicion, which I kind of liked. Like, there's definitely a, wait a minute, you've never even played baseball? So, and then that's when he says his, when do we kick off? Which I did like. So, and I do appreciate the later scenes in this episode where he's going to all these lengths to try to prove himself as a baseball player. I do think that's a source of great amusement.
Yes.
So we switch here, and sorry, I lost track of my notes. There we go. Next scene, we're at the Golden Dugout, and the team's coach, Mr. Crowley, introduces Steele as Brendan St. James from England. They really do love to go hard on these names.
Yes.
He tells him he's joined them, and Steele gives a little speech saying he doesn't really understand the game, but he hopes to learn. Here's my question, because it's obvious that this session was booked well in advance for Kelsey's high school teammates, right? Like, this is I'm guessing it's open to anybody to book. Like, that's why Steele is able to book late. I mean, I know he's undercover, but like, could anybody just book into a session, even though it's a specific group that booked it originally? Or,
well, since I'm not real familiar with how these things operate, I can't say for certain, but I'm going to guess that they will have a session that runs this week to that week, and then maybe a few more during the course of the summer, and that anybody who wants to can register for those. Now, in this particular case, a group booked a session. They may or may not have booked the entire session, because I imagine they limit it to a certain number of people.
right.
You've only got so many people on a team, so you can't really have 100 people involved in something that's 9 per side. So they have some limits. I can see where they might have had some spots available, but it would be kind of weird and very, I would think, from the point of view of the participants, suspicious to have somebody show up halfway through, 2/3 of the way through a session, particularly somebody who, by his own admission, doesn't know anything about the game.
Exactly.
I mean, it's so many red flags should be going up here in everybody's mind. It's no wonder they get found out later on.
No kidding, right? Like, it's pretty obvious. But then you've got Kelsey, who introduces himself. He plays along, obviously, telling them he's Ralph Kelsey from Muncie, Indiana. He tells them he's into machine tooling when he's not playing baseball. He introduces some of his teammates, starting with the man who nearly got crushed by the floodlights, who's Sam Woodman, the world's greatest high school teacher, apparently. I thought that was me, but whatever. A man who calls himself, and here's my question, because I'm confused as to what this guy's name is. I thought it was Ridley, like Ridley, but there are a couple of points in the episode where it sounds like they're calling him Gridley with a G. What is it? Because I didn't actually get the chance to look at the script. Is it Ridley or Gridley?
No, it's Doc Gridley.
Oh, it's Gridley with a G.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
At least
okay,
that is how it is in the transcript we have.
Okay.
Whether or not, let's see, I'm trying to find it in the original script. Let's see, search for Doc. Yeah, Doc Gridley in the original script.
Okay, so I wrote it down.
It's kind of an odd
all
name.
Of my notes.
It's Gridley is kind of an odd last name. You would have thought
it is
Ridley, as in Ridley Scott or something like that. Yeah, but
that's what I thought it was, and so that's what I wrote in all my notes. I'll try to remember to say Gridley. Yeah, he's apparently a proctologist. Steele makes a joke about him being good with about being good with a glove. I get that someone has to do this job, but I genuinely wonder how. How do you choose that profession? How do you wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I really want to go to med school? Butts. I want to study butts. I bet it's not said that way. But
maybe he's just got this fascination.
He likes big butts.
He's always been a butt man, so why not?
I would love to meet and pick somebody's brain, and ask them why. Why proctology? Why that particular specialty? Anyway.
Yeah.
Another man introduces himself as Slats Kittredge and tells him that he is a bus driver from Ohio. The umpire introduces himself as Chubby Bitterman, adding that he taught Mickey Mantle everything he knows. And this is the second time we have had a character named Bitterman in the show, which I think is interesting because the first time was in that, the sleep
Disorder,
episode.
yes.
Yeah, and he was the villain, right? So it's interesting there that they not only recycle guest stars occasionally, but recycle character names because we've had a couple of different character names get recycled. So
yep.
Carstairs being one of them, another one of them that we've seen a couple times now. So yeah.
Hey, when
Mickey
you got a
Mantle
good name, you
shoots
stick
back.
with it.
Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, he jokes that he taught Mickey Mantle everything he knows, and Mantle shoots back everything about selling used cars in Oxnard, which I think is good. Suddenly, a commotion can be heard, and we see Laura in a baseball uniform marching up to them. She introduces herself as Mickey Boggs, saying that her plane was grounded in Chicago and they are expecting her. Jake Crowley says he tried to explain, and Mildred, who is right behind her, says, "Explain what, Buster? That women aren't allowed?" Several players argue that it is a man's sport, and Bitterman adds, "No broads allowed." Steele gets in on the act, saying, "Throw the baggage out."
Now,
which...
can I say a couple things here?
Yeah, go for it.
First of all, baseball as a man's sport, you do remember the movie A League of Their Own,
yes,
which
I was going to point that out.
like most movies and even most so-called documentaries about baseball was vaguely true at best. Yeah, if you're a fan of the Ken Burns baseball series, yeah. Ken Burns is a great storyteller. He's a lousy historian. And you can take that to apply to all of his efforts. They're great, but not good history. Anyway, there was the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, which was portrayed in A League of Their Own. It really was a thing. There were over 600 women who played in the league, and it eventually consisted of 10 teams. And in 1948, even after the war and men's baseball resumed, league attendance peaked at over 900,000 spectators for a season. So, yeah, that was a real thing.
Yeah,
and then as far as your question
and it ran
about...
for 10 years, I think. The league.
Yeah, from actually more than that, 1943 to 1954. So just over 10 years, yeah. And the character played by Tom Hanks, Jimmy Dugan, the name was borrowed from a real player named Jimmy Fox, and he was absolutely nothing like was portrayed in the movie. He was...
I read a thing on it, actually, because I love this movie, and I know there was a TV series that was made on it as well, and I watched like a YouTube history video on the team and on the league and whatnot. And the Dugan character was actually supposed to be a sort of amalgamation of two different real people that existed, and they took bits and pieces from their lives and kind of smushed them together to create the Jimmy Dugan character. But yeah, he was not an actual character. Yeah. That being said, they did have to go to charm school. They did have to wear those uniforms. Like that part I do know is true. Yeah.
Yeah. But the information I found from, I don't remember, based on a True Story podcast, who did a episode on A League of Their Own, he commented that the character of Jimmy Dugan was loosely based on Jimmy Fox, who was a professional ball player from 1925 to 1945, and who was a manager in that league. But unlike the Hanks character, Fox was always gentlemanly around the women players. So
there's no crying in baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of that
she's crying, sir.
That's all made up. Curiously enough, the Baseball Hall of Fame does have an entire exhibit dedicated to the Women's Baseball League, but there are no members of the league in the Hall of Fame. The only female currently in the Hall of Fame is Effa Manley, who owned the Newark Eagles of the Negro Leagues, who, along with her husband, owned that. And so she's in the Hall of Fame, but so far she's the only female. So, and the other thing was your question about the baseball pants. Need I say more?
No, come on. You're killing me. You didn't like the gold top and Maltese, but the baseball pants? Seriously?
What can I say? What can I say?
I don't get
it. You don't have to.
So yeah, I think we can agree that it is, you're right. It's not a quote man's sport. Like obviously there have been, but Steele getting in on the act is quite funny. Throw the baggage out. I do like that. Although I gotta wonder, like, he obviously knew she was going to do this. This was obviously part of the plan. So
right.
Why make her life hard? I guess it's just so that he can pretend to be one of the guys or just get her goat somehow. But it is quite funny that he throw the baggage out. Not allowed. No.
Well, it's perfect Steele.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Laura says that if they don't know the law of the land, Miss Zug Smith of the Equal Rights Commission will be happy to elaborate. And I love that Mildred is Miss Zug Smith because that's the worst name. Mildred does her best to look tough and imposing. Crowley begins to argue again, but Mildred cuts him off, saying they can either play hardball on the field or in a court with a civil suit injunction and ugly PR. I do love this because it's perfect Mildred. Like it's the perfect moment for Mildred to play her hard, tough as nails type characters. And so obviously the coach, knowing when he's beaten, says he's had enough problems, tells her that she can play. Slat seems annoyed. Steele gets another dig in by calling her delicate. Crowley orders her on to shortstop with St. James, switches a few of the positions around and tells him to get out there. So, yeah, delicate. Maybe he's playing, to use a hockey metaphor, he's skating on thin ice here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He's going to get beamed.
So then Steele does his best to sort of yell and sound all macho. The doc says confidentially to him that something tells him Laura is a real tiger. He agrees. They take their positions. Laura takes her place. And again, she starts doing the baseball lingo. I don't know what to call this. What do you call this? When they're like,
chatter.
Hey, better, go better. Chatter?
Chatter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Steele asks her where to stand. She points to a spot. Bitterman tells Mickey Mantle that if she wants to play, to show her how it's done. He hits I'm guessing this is a ground ball. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Okay. Laura catches it, throws it to second base. He throws it to third, and Mildred yells, "Way to go, Mickey." So she obviously knows what she's doing.
First, but anyway.
Okay, so I don't know. It looked like
because see, what they're trying to do is they're practicing a double play.
Okay.
So what happens is, it's hit to the shortstop. Shortstop throws it to second. Second throws it to first. And ideally, you catch the runner from first base by throwing the ball to second, get him out before he can get to the base, and then you throw it to first base and get the batter out before he can get to first base.
See, this is I don't know any of this stuff. Have you ever seen the show The IT Crowd?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know the one where they end up at a soccer game?
It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I don't remember.
Okay, so essentially, for those of you who don't know, the IT Crowd is a TV show about like nerds that work in IT, and that's
those same people that took down the internet this week.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, they're nerds. They work in IT. They like nerdy things, and there's one episode where the one character, Chris O'Dowd's character, is trying to essentially get in with the popular crowd. And he starts to pretend he likes soccer / football, as they call it there. And they get invited to a football game, soccer game, right? So they're sitting in the crowd, and it's clear that they know absolutely nothing about soccer whatsoever. And one of the other characters, Moss, he said he's watching and he's narrating what's going on. And he says, "Hooray, he's kicked the ball. Now the ball's over there. That man has it now. That's an interesting development. Maybe he'll kick the ball. He has indeed. And apparently that deserves a round of applause." So This is how it's going to sound when I try to narrate the baseball game.
No, but see, this is perfect because you're like the announcer of the baseball game, and I'm like the color commentary. It's perfect.
Yeah. Sure. So yeah, that's me. He's hit the ball, then he caught it, then he threw it to that guy. Now, yeah. So anyway, so Bitterman tells St. James the next one is his, and Mantle hits towards him. Steele catches it and stands there grinning, clearly proud. This would be me. I'd be like, look, I got it. Mildred yells, throw the ball, you bum. She goes over and tells him to throw it to second base. He says he knows, but he wants to savor the moment, likening it to one's first kiss or the first time one drives a car. Laura yells, throw the lousy ball, and he does so, clearly no longer savoring. Then he says, it's only a game, and walks away.
Obviously, it's more than just a game for Laura as well.
Yeah. I wish that they had dug a little more into this. Like, they don't really get the time because there's so much going on in this episode, but it's obvious she knows the game. It's obvious she has some kind of love for it because she knows of the camp. She seems like genuinely excited when Ralph Kelsey mentions it. And she kind of apologizes to Kelsey when Mr. Steele acts sort of demeaning about it. And then she really knows the baseball lingo and how to throw and how to... I wonder if like she played when she was younger or she watched it with her father or if there's some sort of connection there that it would have been nice to know about if we had gotten some sort of scene where she talked about it, but we don't. We just get her knowing what she's doing in Steele.
She could have played softball when she was in, grade school or high school or even college. Yeah. And baseball and softball are very similar in a lot of ways. I mean, there's some differences, obviously. The ball is different, but they're very, very similar in most respects. And in terms of the strategies and the type of play involved, they're very, very similar. So if she had any softball experience at all, that would translate directly over.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it just would have been nice to get some of that background if there was background to it.
Yeah.
So then we switch over to the locker room. The coach brings Laura in, apologizing for the lack of ladies' change rooms. This seems a little odd. Like, there's no other bathroom anywhere in the facility that she could have changed in?
Well, probably not, because you would typically have dressing rooms for each team, one for each team, and they would be designed along the normal design philosophy, which is an all-male locker room. What I find interesting is that, first of all, what are the odds that every guy in the locker room would be covered up when she comes in?
Yeah.
And second of all, what are the odds that there would already be curtains there hanging for her to use to ensure her privacy? I mean, come on.
Well, he did say he set it up.
Yeah, like okay, he said that the curtain maybe, but I mean, every guy being covered up, no way.
Yeah, it would have made more sense if he yelled, "Is everyone decent?" or whatever before they walk in. Because you're right, like the chance
guys in the shower.
She'd see something for sure. So yeah, and this is weird because the Doc's stuff is in a locker behind the curtain. You would think that if the curtain was there, he would have already moved his things.
Well, he was out on the field, so maybe.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe while all that was going on the field, the manager or one of the people who, were behind the scenes were told, put up some curtains for the gal. Hey, these guys, okay, their lockers are inside the space that we're going to give to her. They'll just have to move their stuff when they get here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I you can make an argument, but yeah, the covered up, not so much. Anyway.
Well, she does tell them that she appreciates it, and she goes in behind the curtain, and Steele then tells the other men he's going to see if Miss Boggs needs anything in the way of razor blades, etc. They throw their towels at him, assuming he's going to hit on her, and he just walks over and pulls the curtain back. Again,
yeah.
What if she had half her shirt unbuttoned at this point? Like,
yeah,
maybe a little heads up,
presumptuous,
right? Yeah. He smugly tells her they managed to make it to first base without an error. She compliments him on picking up the lingo, but tells him not to let the locker room attitude go to his head. He tells her he has to appear as if he's lusting after her in order to let them touch base, as it were. But here's the thing. Then it's Bitterman, right, that grabs the curtain from the other side and just pulls it back?
Yeah.
Or is it? Yeah, I thought it was Bitter. What the heck, man? Like,
Yeah.
not cool. There's a curtain there for a reason. And he's like, I don't hear much chatter. And it's like, okay, if they were doing something inappropriate.
Yeah,
now
probably.
you've gotten the full view. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, Laura then tells him to keep his hands to himself and hits him with a towel. She closes both curtains, and Steele walks back unimpressed. So then later on, we've got Laura and the coach walking together in the field. He obviously knows now who she is because he tells her that she handled herself fairly well, and she thanks him. I'm guessing he knew the whole time, and he had to just appear as if he didn't want a woman on the team because he would be expected to behave that way, or did they tell him after?
Well, I was thinking that after Kelsey had gone, well, either after he'd gone to hire the Steele agency, or maybe before he did, he had told the manager, hey, I want to keep this open. I'm going to go hire some detectives to come on in and do some investigating. Or he told them after he had that meeting. He would have known when they showed up who they were, what was going on.
That's what I
So he would, he would have been in on it, and yeah, you're right. He had to play the part of somebody who had no knowledge. So.
Okay, fair enough. He tells her she handled herself fairly well, and she thanks him for allowing them to go undercover. He admits that Kelsey took it so personally he couldn't say no. Laura asks what makes him think that someone from the group is responsible, and he tells her that they've always had a spotless safety record, and now they have 2 suspicious accidents. He tells her when the pitcher is done, you pull him so you don't lose the game. Laura asks what he means, and he tells her that there's a bum apple in the bunch, and he would rather throw out the whole bushel than risk the camp's reputation. So, here's my question, because we know who the people responsible are, right? Mm-hmm. There's more than one accident that takes place here. Right. And I'm assuming this is an alphabet murders thing that Sam put himself in harm's way so that it would divert suspicion away from him. But it also risks getting the camp shut down, which would then prevent them from achieving their goal of getting rid of Ralph. So it seems a bit silly to...
Yeah. Unless he didn't anticipate the potential decision of the camp being shut down.
Fair enough. I just think it was also risky to kind of put yourself in that position, and like if it looks like enough of an accident, then it doesn't necessarily have to be murder. It just has to be an accident, right? Like,
right.
So yeah, they get to the site of the fallen floodlight. Laura takes a look at the bottom of the light, and the coach says the maintenance guy said it could be metal fatigue. Laura has another theory. She says, or hacksaw fatigue, engineered the night before under cover of darkness, activated by a slight push at the right time. Would it actually stay up if it had been sawed off?
Yeah, that whole thing is a little bit weak. If it was that easily tipped over... I don't think it would be standing, because
no,
you it's either going to be secure enough that you're pushing on it is going to be obvious, or it's so tenuous that just by walking by and giving it a slight tap, your elbow maybe or whatever, you can get it to knock over so that you don't make it obvious that what you're doing. I would think it wouldn't take much of a breeze to have blown it over in that particular instance, because
especially like something that tall, right? With the lights at the top, there'd be certain weight like on the sides of it too, right? Because those lights would be
potentially unbalanced. Yes, but even if it was fairly well balanced, where it would stand up on its own, if it was so easily knocked over, then with those lights up high above the height of the stands and such, they're going to be catching some breeze that you wouldn't necessarily feel on the field. And it wouldn't take much to knock them over. Yeah. So it's kind of iffy.
If you've ever seen a caber toss, I don't know if you've ever seen a caber toss, but a caber toss is
Caber toss?
one of those Scottish
Home
heavy events
Improvement
where
did
they
a-
basically. Oh, okay. They basically take what looks to be a long telephone pole and they have to throw it up end over end, but they have to run with it in their hands and it has to not tip over before they can like flip it in the air.
Mhm.
And it's extremely difficult to do if you've ever watched it. The balance of something that tall, which is why I think this thing would have fallen over if they had sawed it overnight, but whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah. She asked if there were any eyewitnesses. The coach says that nobody saw a thing, comparing them to umpires.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I have to do this. There's a Buffy quote that I have to just say.
Reference.
There's always a Buffy reference. I'm going to send you season 1. I'm going to get you.
I'm surprised that your earlier comment wasn't specifically made into a Buffy reference, because I
Which one?
saw that coming, and I'm sure that you did that as a courtesy to me. You just didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, there's an episode where Buffy is talking about her feelings for another Angel who is a vampire. And Xander says, "You're in love with a vampire?" And then Cordelia walks by them and he realizes she's overheard and he says, "You're in love with an umpire? How could you love an umpire? Everybody hates them." So, what made me think of the comment about umpires. Anyway, so then we get a scene change. Steele is practicing catch with Slats. He throws the ball to him and Steele catches it but hurts his hand. Steele tells him that's what they call the high hog. Steele complains that he thought gloves were supposed to be padded, and Slats tells him he has to catch it right. He goes to throw another ball, and Steele begs for 5 minutes for his hand to return to its normal size. Slats says no problem and runs over to where Steele is at home plate. They sit down on some buckets, and Steele asks if he heard about the accident the other day. Slats tells him that Woodman almost bought it, and Steele presses on, saying that he almost had the same thing happen the day before. Slats tells him at the sliding pit that the metal stake that holds the plate down had come loose and nobody noticed because it was covered with sand. He says he has a nasty scratch coming in, but if he'd slid a bit to the left, he'd be singing soprano. What? Can you explain to me exactly what, because I'm confused by what he's described. Like, there's a metal, huh?
Yeah, I'm not that expert that I know, but I do know that the bases are secured to the ground. They're not just laid there. They used to be,
Okay.
I believe, back in the 1800s, very early 1900s, just dropped on the ground. But yeah, they're secured to the ground by some method. And I suppose if somebody wasn't doing a very good job of maintenance, that if the bag was not secured properly and it came loose, then as you're sliding into the bag, if it's loose, you could knock it out of the way, and whatever is down there underneath it in the ground coming up that they secure it to could be potentially uncomfortable. Yeah.
So he wouldn't be having children anytime soon?
Well, he might be, but he might be singing soprano in the process. Yes.
Okay. Well, Steele mentions he knows a good personal injury lawyer, and Slats brushes it off as an accident, saying there's no way he's going to mess up this reunion. He tells Steele that he, Woodman, Kelsey, Gridley, Chubby, and him all played on the same team in high school back in Muncie, the East Lake High School Wildcats, who were state champs back in 1964. I was curious about this because I will admit that my civil rights history, where the U.S. is concerned, is maybe not the best. But I wondered, okay, would schools even be desegregated back then? Because I know that that was the time of the civil rights movement, roughly, right? So I looked it up, and apparently Indiana actually desegregated schools back in 1949. So, yeah, they were ahead of the curve, which I found interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember when the civil rights legislation was. Very early 60s. I don't remember the exact year. But, yeah, I mean, there were places that were ahead of the curve.
I just thought that was kind of interesting because it wasn't something that I normally think about. But then I went, wait a minute, this was 1984 that this episode aired. And to have a person of color on a baseball team in high school in the 1960s, you'd have to have a school system that was desegregated, because otherwise that would be anachronistic. But no, they got it right. They picked a good state for that, I guess. So he says they were the greatest bunch of guys. Steele tries a new tactic, saying it must be expensive, and he's surprised he can afford it. Slat says that when Ralphie first called him up, he told him he couldn't hack it, but that Ralph offered to pay for him to attend. Steele absorbs this news, and Slat stands up, suggesting they see how he handles his slider. Steele, less enthusiastically, stands up as well. So he's less interested in his slider, more so on finding out. He does a good job, I think, though, of getting this information out and making it look natural. It doesn't quite work as well a bit later on, but this was a good sort of undercover conversation. Then we get Laura in the gym. This exercise bike is weird. This looks really bad on the back, first of all. I don't think I've ever seen a bike where you're like going all the way down and coming all the way back up. I'm not even sure what to call it.
I would presume that it was a real thing. I mean, you wouldn't custom build something like that that's so ridiculous just for one scene. So I'm sure that they just went out to an exercise store and bought it. But yeah, it doesn't look
maybe
like
it's
fun.
one of those things that was a fad in the 80s that doesn't like those ab crunchers that you could buy, right? Because my husband works for Good Life Fitness. He works at the head office for the entire company, and Good Life Fitness is the largest fitness chain in Canada. It's everywhere, coast to coast. There's like 300 and some odd gyms, right? And although there are other gym chains, Good Life is the McDonald's of all of them, right? And so he works in the office.
I don't know if they would be all that appreciative of that comparison, but anyway.
Probably not. Please don't sue me. Anyway, but I've been in more than one Good Life, and I've never seen a bike that looks like this.
Well, there over the history of mankind, and particularly in the 20th century, there have been a lot of things sold as health devices and health remedies that were highly questionable.
This is like speaking as someone who has a back injury, this bike, no thanks.
Yeah.
Steele walks in and she asks what he's been up to. He says catching, though chasing would better describe it. She tells him to stick to it, and that it takes a little practice. He sarcastically adds, and iron hands, not to mention ankles, knees, arms, shoulders. I do like this. She gets off the bike and asks if he found out anything, and Steele relays the information he got from Slat, saying the first action could have been deliberate and deadly, but there's no way of knowing. He sits down on a weight machine. Laura lays down on a rowing machine, saying that her chat with Crowley was similar. Steele tells her that Kelsey paid Slats his way there. Laura begins to row, saying she doesn't believe in coincidental accidents and that they will have to play ball for a while. She asks if he can handle that. As she does, a mirror comes loose above her, and Steele warns her to look out. She jumps off the rowing machine just as the mirror comes crashing down, narrowly missing her. I get that these are designed to look like accidents, and I get that this is an alphabet murder situation where they're setting it up, but they're also taking a risk that they could kill somebody else, and they don't seem to care about that. I mean,
well, I guess, if you're going to kill one person, what's a few more along the way, especially if it serves your purpose?
Is that not a bit sociopathic, though?
Did I say it wasn't?
Okay, well, fair enough. Not to mention, what if, we know eventually they do end up getting Ralph, but what if he managed to evade all of their attempts and then the session ended and somebody else died in his place?
Well, that doesn't mean the attempts have to stop. It just means they have to change their venue and method of attack. I mean, they can still make it work. I mean, and if nothing else, it just makes it maybe even. What?
It just sounds like you're giving a pep talk. They could still make it work. They could try. I mean, it's not over till it's over.
That's right. Not over till the fat lady sings. No, but I mean, and it might even work in their favor, especially if they can make it look like when it does happen afterwards, after the camp is over, if they can make it look like they weren't even there. But yeah, I mean,
that's fair.
Hey, it's called improvisation. So yeah.
That's fair. Let the record be shown that Eric is hoping that they're able to take out Ralph.
I didn't say that. Anyway,
we get a scene change. They're examining the wall. Laura declares that moisture must have weakened the glue on the mirror. Steele concludes the air conditioners behind the wall might have caused seepage. Laura isn't so sure. She says it looks like the water came from the front of the wall, almost as if it had been injected. Steele wonders if it was a syringe.
I have to wonder about that. I mean, how would that work? First of all,
I wondered that myself.
I mean, it would take a very long needle to get water back behind the mirror sufficiently to soften the entire surface where the thing is glued together. And then it would take a lot of water. And then it would take a lot of time to accomplish that. I mean, it doesn't seem like the sort of thing that you could, A, reasonably accomplish, and B, even if you could, I think somebody would notice.
Well, that was my other question. Are there no security cameras anywhere at this camp? I would think that there'd be some.
You know, in the weight room, probably not. Elsewhere, maybe. But I mean, remember, this was the 1980s. Security cameras were not all that common, except in places of business where there was maybe high value items, or they were
fair enough.
You know, government agencies or things where there was classified stuff. But regardless, I mean, to stand there injecting a huge amount of water in behind the mirror, but in front of the wall. That's going to take so long and so much water and so much work that somebody's going to. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just washing the back of the mirror from. No.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Laura agrees, but wonders if it wasn't an accident who the intended victim was. She wonders if it was her or the next member of the team to use the equipment. Steele names the film That Touching Season. Which sounds like it could be about something else, but...
No, that championship season.
Oh,
that championship season.
Whoops.
What are you thinking?
I don't know. Adult baseball camp.
Very touching.
Anyway, a rather modern one, having come out in 1982, and describes it as a reunion that erupts into a litany of grudges and hatred. She asks, and murder? He admits no, but that's the gist. She thinks he might be on the right track and suggests they explore how close the friendships of the East Lake Wildcats are. She says she'll cozy up to Doc Gridley and suggests he check in with Sam Woodman. Now, Eric, I have to admit that when you expressed appreciation for something Laura was wearing, I expected it to be the red bikini in the next scene, not the baseball pants.
Oh, what can I say? What can I say? I've got, yeah. I'm not going to say that it's. No comment.
That's probably the most revealing thing that she's worn on the show, I think, is that bikini.
It is.
Because we've seen her in a bathing suit before when she was on that boat. And it was a one piece.
Of like
it was more of like the kind of bathing suit you wear for like swimming laps, speed swimming, that kind of thing, right? But no, she's coming out and she's dressed to kill. And
I like a good one piece.
Only you.
I'll just say that.
Only you.
I'll just say that.
Doc Gridley is in a hot. Is there a hot tub in the locker room? Because
what it looks like.
Yeah. Okay, that's weird.
It's not probably going to be in the locker room proper, but just like right off the side of it, and another like another room off to the side that you go through. Kind of like next to the weight room and the exercise room, they would probably have lockers with showers and such, and this would probably be alongside that.
So she comes out and she asks if he minds that she joins him. He tells her to come on in and to call him Doc, and he's clearly looking at her butt, which I guess, given his profession, it could just be an
professional.
Inspection.
It's a professional curiosity.
Professional interest. Yeah. Like the
which may explain why he went into that field.
Could be, yeah. She sits down and immediately laughs at the bubbles sneaking up on her.
She got
tells her
awful
the
cozy
bubbles
to
have
awful
all the
fast
luck.
to the dock, didn't she?
Yeah.
Why didn't she go to the opposite side?
Right? And then, especially if you're sitting right down on the jets, I would move anyway because that's not comfortable.
Well, apparently it is.
He tells her the bubbles have all the luck and that the jets are adjustable.
Yeah.
That's awkward. Yeah. She then says she wants to thank him for the locker, and he compliments her on throwing the old apple around. She begins to butter him up, saying that she can't compare with them, and says what a wonderful idea it was to have a reunion for old teammates. He agrees, saying that Ralph thought it was a great time for them to get together and forgive and forget, which she obviously pounces on and says, "Forgive and forget what?" He's evasive, saying, "Oh, the usual things." She presses for more, and he says that's yesterday's news, and he wants to focus on today. I think she did too good a job of cozying up to him. I think that's the problem, right? Because like she snuggled right up next to him, and instead of getting the information, he's now like, I don't want to worry about that. Let's focus on now.
Yeah. I might get lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. So doesn't really work. She comments on how the five of them must have been very close. And before he can say anything, she leaps up, claiming something's in the water. She reaches down and yanks his foot up, which was obviously making its way places it shouldn't. And in doing so, he gets pulled under the water. I do like this. This is funny. Yeah. He comes up sputtering. And she apologizes, claiming she just can't seem to relax. That's what you get for trying to play footsie.
Yeah.
So, and I'm kind of wondering how his foot managed to get there. They were sitting awfully close.
He's very flexible.
Oh, that's awkward.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get the next scene. Sam Woodman is walking outside the building. Steele exits and is clearly intent on catching up with him when he sees him having an intimate rendezvous with someone who is not his wife. Steele hesitates and pretends to look at the flyers on a post when Laura catches up to him. Her hair dried awfully fast. Yeah. Like, I don't know how long this is, but afterward, the fact, but her hair dried really fast.
And her clothes. I mean, she was wearing those while she was working out. So wouldn't they be sweaty? Yeah. And would she have changed unless she has identical costumes and outfits?
Well, it depends. I this might be weird, but I don't actually really sweat. I've been told I should see a doctor, but yeah, no, Scott, I'm serious. My husband and I can be walking in like 40-degree heat. His back will be like soaking wet, like his shirt will be soaked, and my arm will be bone dry.
Do you walk around with your tongue hanging out going?
No. No, but it is probably something I should have looked at because it probably means that I'm not actually cooling in a way that I should be.
Yeah.
Anyway. So yeah, she catches up to him and yeah, he gestures towards Sam and simply says, "Yonder." He says it's amazing how the desert air revitalizes one's marriage, and Laura agrees, pointing out they aren't married to each other. So I like that.
Yeah.
Later on, they appear to be at like a bar or clubhouse. I'm assuming that belongs to the dugout, because otherwise,
probably not. But I can't say for certain one way. I'm guessing it was just a nearby restaurant that they decided to.
Oh, okay.
To go over to.
They're seated at a table. Sam is telling a story. He's describing a game from the good old days and saying that Chubby hired a skywriter to okay, sorry, my notes. His wife interrupts and says, "Lincoln High stinks," just before the national anthem. I was trying to figure out what I was trying to write. Anyway, they all laugh, and she points out that she's had to hear the story many times. They look over at Ralph and his wife, who are looking at an old photo. He says, "It's us," and points out that there wasn't an ounce of fat on them. Sam teases him, saying, "And look at you now." His wife, the woman Sam was with earlier, says, "You leave Ralphie's love handles alone." Sam jokes that there is sex after 40, and his wife says, "Sam, stop." And Ralph teases that She probably didn't say that last night, and Sam's wife threatens to tell them about their honeymoon. So this is obviously a weird situation. Laura picks up on it and comments that the four of them must have known each other a long time. Sam quips too long, and Ralph's wife says that Sam is her ex-husband, and Sam's wife adds that she was married to Ralph. What a weird little situation.
Now my earlier note comes into play as just an ancillary comment to what is going to come next. In 1973, specifically the 4th of March, Yankee pitchers Mike Kekich and Fritz Peterson were traded by their wives for each other. Peterson and Kekich had been friends since 1969. The families often spent time together, and presumably the adults also spent time together without the kids. And the implications of everything I've read was that as their friendship evolved, there was a little bit of
stuff Lord Marchmain was right about?
Sharing, yes. And in time, the two wives decided that they preferred the other husband to their own, and the husbands simultaneously decided that they also preferred the other wives to their own. So they traded wives, families, houses, and even dogs. Fritz Peterson packed up and moved in with Susan Kekich and the Kekich kids and dog, and Mike Kekich moved in with Marilyn Peterson, the Peterson kids and dog. Now, Fritz Peterson and Susan Kekich were married in 1974 and remained married until his death in 2023. But Mike Kekich and Marilyn Peterson never married, and their relationship broke up shortly after the trade. And Fritz Peterson was a regular attendee at the Yankees fantasy camp in Florida.
Huh. I wonder if the writers knew all of this. They had to.
I'm sure that this was a direct drop, going to take this and just drop it into the script right here. And in fact, may have even in some respects been kind of a motivation for part of the script. So,
wow. That's crazy.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, Laura and Steele don't know what to make of this. Laura says, "Oh," 3 times, and then how nice for you.
Oh.
What do you say to that? Genuinely, what do you say to that? How nice for you. Yeah. Ralph adds that it's amazing that the 4 of them are still the best of friends. Steele says incredible might be a better word.
Yeah.
I do like that. I think that's funny. So then we have a scene change, and he and Laura are walking back. He comments that he's heard of love triangles, but never a tetrahedron. I looked it up. In geometry, a tetrahedron, also known as a triangular pyramid, is a polyhedron composed of 4 triangular faces, 6 straight edges, and 4 vertices. The tetrahedron is the simplest of all the ordinary convex polyhedra. I know nothing about baseball, but I can tell you what a tetrahedron is. So there we go.
I always thought he should have said
an accurate metaphor, though.
I always thought he should have said quadrilateral.
Quadrilateral. That's what I was thinking. Quadrilateral would have been a better analogy, but whatever.
Yeah.
So Laura admits it is very confusing, and as they walk, they hear someone say, "Psst." They turn, and it's Mildred. Steele assures her they're alone. She tells them that she's been doing background checks like they asked, and she found out that 5 years ago, Chubby Bitterman borrowed $250,000 from Ralph Kelsey to open a car dealership, and 2 years later it went bankrupt. Chubby was wiped out. Laura tells Steele it may be a brand new ballgame. So we've got a few people now hinting at old grudges or things they need to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
And they all seem to be tied in around Ralph. So we get another scene switch. In a room, they're all watching the footage from the previous day's practice. Laura throws a good pitch, and the batter hits it. Steele fumbles and drops the ball. The coach asks him what happened, and he unconvincingly says he lost it in the sun.
Well, yeah, because if I remember correctly, and I'll go back and double check it here, but it was a ground ball. You don't lose a ground ball in the sun.
Yeah. Well, he's not really a sports guy, so next we see Ralph come up to bat.
Lost it in the sun is a time-honored time-honored classic excuse for, missing the ball.
Yeah. Isn't that why they put those little black things on their eyes, under their eyes?
To help, with the glare.
Knew that. Yeah. Laura throws the pitch. He hits it and runs. Bitterman tells him to watch the Klutz brothers in person as Ralph trips over Slat's feet while he tries to catch the ball. They get angry with one another and begin shoving each other. Gridley intervenes, and as they watch, he teases them that it was just like old times. Ralph is clearly aggravated, claiming it was just one of those things, and tells him to get off it before he storms away. Slats tries to make peace, saying it's cool, and Chubby adds that he didn't mean it, but Sam tells him to let them go. Steele moves closer to Chubby while the coach suggests watching the play again. Steele asks Chubby if this has happened before, and Chubby tells him that 20 years ago, Ralph was being scouted by some major league teams when whammo. He says at the last game of the playoffs, he and Slats collided under a pop fly and tore up the cartilage in his knee. Bye-bye big time. That's got to be rough. Like, to go from that to machine tooling, like, he's not hurting for cash. Ralph clearly has money, but as you said, like, he had other dreams. Those dreams revolved around playing, and one injury, and that's all gone, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, and I didn't do the research to get the numbers on this, but baseball is like most professional sports. There's a lot of people who, growing up, grade school, high school, college, who have dreams of making it big in the professional leagues, and very, very few ever make it. I mean, it's like single digits of the percentages of people who try ever achieve it. At least in baseball, with the minor league system, there's the opportunity to play even if you never make it to the big team. But, in the minor leagues, they don't get paid a lot of money. So a lot of times they're doing it part-time, but at least they have an opportunity to continue playing after college and being professional players, in that respect that other sports don't, but still very, very small percentage. So what he is feeling is something that a lot of people experience, and a lot of times it's because of injuries. It's not just because they're not good enough, but injuries, and even people who make it to the big leagues can have their career just ended overnight because of an injury. And that's got to mess up your whole psyche, because you're thinking, here I am, I'm a Superman, I'm indestructible, I'm playing, I've got this huge career in front of me. And then all of a sudden overnight, it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean there are some other sports that do have like lower leagues that you can play professionally for soccer, for example. There are 3 divisions below what would be known in England as the Premier League. And what their system is interesting because teams can get demoted if they don't do well enough in the league. Like, you could have a team that's in the Premier League, but say they don't get enough points that season, they're going down a division, the whole team, right? The entire team. And all of a sudden now they're a first division team, not a Premier team. So, and then the opposite can happen, that you can have a, say, first division team that's right there on, they have a really good season. They get enough points that they move up into the Premier League. So all of a sudden people who were not in the Premier League are suddenly there, right? And they've had teams go from third division to Premier League and win league championships and get, and then that of course brings in the paycheck. So it's never a guarantee that you're going to stay, even if you get to the Premier League in soccer. My husband, when he was young, was scouted for the under-14s for the local or the first division team in his area. And if he had pursued it, he could have played first division soccer. But his dream was to be in the Premier League, and because he thought, well, I'm not good enough to quite get there, I don't want to bother. But his favorite team, Rangers, which are a Glasgow-based soccer team, a number of years ago, they were relegated to the third division. And this is a team that has won almost the most, if not the most, league championships in all of Scottish soccer. And I can't remember what happened, some sort of scandal where they were busted for doing something they shouldn't have been, or I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were busted down all the way to the 3rd division. And it took a few years, but they clawed their way back up, and they're now back in the Premier League. So interesting, like, that you can do that in other sports. But yeah, you're right. You can make money in the minors as well with baseball, and even with hockey to an extent, although not a lot. But yeah, so Ralph is obviously upset over this sort of same situation happening again. Steele comments on the bad luck, and Chubby says that Ralph lived for the game, and deep down, he has never forgiven Slats. The coach insists on having everyone's attention to look at batting practice tapes, and Laura and Steele excuse themselves. As they're walking around the field, Laura comments on the loan and the collision with Slats, pointing out that Ralph had some axes to grind. Steele adds the third and points out the infidelity of his wife Margie and Sam. Meanwhile, we see Ralph putting balls in the ball machine to work off some steam. He walks over, grabs a bat, begins to hit the balls as the machine kind of throws them. Laura and Steele are still walking, and Laura says the reunion was his idea. Steele adds that he made sure everyone he wanted there to be there could make it, and in the background you can hear the ball machine. Laura wonders if he only invited them to take a crack at them, one by one, and Steele points out it would explain his desperation to keep the session together, as there wouldn't be another time to have them all together again. Laura has trouble believing it, saying that he seemed so sincere. Steele says so was Jack the Ripper, presumably, which is a weird statement to make, but okay. And all of a sudden we hear a scream. They look to see Ralph's wife run towards Ralph, who's been hit by a ball and is lying on the ground. They run to check on him, but it's too late. Laura tries to comfort Margie, but she is inconsolable. And I'm sure you'll know the answer to this, but could a machine like this really kill someone?
Potentially, yes. Well, first of all, keep in mind that we find out in a little bit that the ball was supposedly doctored and loaded with BBs or ball bearings and such. Yeah. So I have questions about how that would have been accomplished, because that just doesn't seem like something you could make happen and it not be noticed in some manner. The stitching would have revealed it.
Accurate.
Well, no, that's the point. But the stitching I would have thought would have revealed it. The feel of the ball when you picked it up would have revealed it. But yeah, so those pitching machines are designed to pitch or to I guess, yeah, you can say technically pitch a ball at some fairly good speeds. They may not be at the speeds quite up to what a major league pitcher can do, but they've got some pretty good speed behind them. And there is a precedent for ball players getting killed by a ball to the head. In the 1920s, a guy named Ray Chapman was hit in the head by a pitch thrown by pitcher Carl Mays and died 12 hours later. See, only ball player to ever have died of a direct injury received during a major league game. At the time, pitchers commonly dirtied. They didn't replace baseballs during the course of a game. You might, if a ball got lost up into the stands or a fan caught it, you might go through 3-4 balls during the game, but that would be kind of unusual. And at the time, pitchers dirtied the balls with soil and licorice juice, tobacco juice. They scuffed and sandpapered, scarred, cut the balls. The balls were much softer. And so as the game progressed, the ball would get dirty and hard to see. The shape would get kind of squishy. And so all these things combined resulted in a ball that traveled through the air erratically. And because of all the scuffing and surfacing things and the ball getting softer over the course of the game, and because it was so dirty and discolored, it was hard to see. And so the pitcher in this particular game had what was called a submarine delivery. It was late in the afternoon. And so presumably the batter didn't see the ball, because the witnesses said that he didn't even react at all to the ball coming at him. The sound of the ball hitting his skull was so loud that the pitcher thought that the batter had hit it with the bat.
Oh my God.
The ball came out so far that the pitcher was able to field it and throw it to first base. So, yeah, he was taken to the hospital. This is
obviously before they wore any helmets or anything,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yeah,
I
this
guess
was in the
yeah.
1920s. In fact, it was 1920 specifically.
It's bizarre to think that some of these sports were played without helmets that are now played with helmets, right? Like hockey goaltenders didn't used to wear helmets. It wasn't until there was I can't remember what team he played for, but a goaltender who began marking. He was the first to actually make himself a helmet and wear it, and then he put marks on any time the puck hit him in the head. And by the end of his career, the helmet was covered in X's, showing how many times he'd taken a blow to the head from a puck. And that was when the league sort of went, yeah, maybe we should have goaltenders wear helmets.
Yeah. Well, this incident did not lead to helmets being adopted. It did lead to a rule requiring umpires to replace the ball whenever it got dirty. But helmets were not introduced as a standard and a required thing for batters until it would have been like the 70s, 80s, somewhere in there.
That's crazy.
And even then it was because batters were getting beamed and sustaining serious injuries. So, and ball players, they had this, dare I say it, macho thing. I don't need no helmet. It just hit me in the head. That's not a big deal. It's not anything important. So there was a little bit of a macho attitude along with that. And the perception that players who wore helmets were kind of, like, yeah, you little wuss, you. But eventually they became required. And in fact, now those helmets have evolved. It used to be just like I'm trying to think. There was an ice cream place that used to do ice cream things in little helmets, and they were just basically a hard version of a baseball cap. But they've gotten to the point where now they dropped down and covered the ears. Okay, well, that's because those were a sensitive area and could be injured. Well, now they've gotten to the point where some of the helmets that batters are wearing have extensions that come out and cover their cheek and the side of their mouth up to that point, because that whole area is basically exposed. And if a pitcher loses control of a ball when he's pitching it, whether by accident or on purpose, it doesn't have, you don't have to get hit directly in the head to sustain serious injury. There have been ball players who've had their jaws shattered by getting hit by a ball. So, yeah, it's a good thing that they're wearing helmets, but even this incident back in the 1920s did not lead to that. So,
I think it's crazy. Craziness. I would not want things flying at my face. I don't know about you, but that's not my idea of fun. So, yeah. So we get a scene switch, and then we see the coroner is leaving, and the coach declares it's time to close the session down. Laura tries to change his mind, saying that if he closes it down now, they will lose the whole ballgame. Steele points out that the coroner blamed the batting machine and that his program could be in for some deadly publicity. Laura adds that if they catch the killer, the golden dugout is in the clear. The coach sees the point, adding that there's only one day left of the session. Laura says, think of it this way. Your team is in a jam, and I'm sure you know who this is, but they just called in Goose Gossage to bail you out. Who the heck is Goose Gossage?
That's a curious reference because, and I looked it up to get the details here. In the late 70s and early 80s, Goose Gossage was one of the earliest manifestations of the modern closer.
Okay.
It used to be that in baseball, you're a pitcher, go pitch. We've got 9 innings. You're going to pitch all 9 innings. And then it got to the point eventually where they would bring in a closer. Okay, you've been throwing hard, you're getting tired, you're starting to lose control, and we need to get somebody in there that's fresh, who can get the job done and close the deal. And Gossage was one of the earlier manifestations of that, and complete with facial hair and gruff demeanor along with his fastball. Mm-hmm. And he led the American League in saves 3 times and was runner-up twice. By the end of the 87 season, he ranked 2nd in the major leagues for career saves. And when he retired, he was ranked 3rd in the major league for career games pitched and remains 3rd in wins in relief and innings pitched in relief. but he's also the career leader in blown saves. So,
Oh no.
yeah. So, I mean, his winning number for saves is 115. His blown saves is 112. That's basically just a hair under 50%. He was not. Yeah. Laura's choice to use Goose Gossage in this situation is a little bit curious. I would have thought she could have come up with somebody better than that. But anyway, maybe it was just the name she knew.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah. Steele asks who Goose Gossage is. Laura says she'll explain later, but right now Mickey Boggs needs to pay the widow Kelsey a visit. As she leaves, Steele tells the coach he wants to know how the batting machine works. The coach tells him to grab a bat. Considering the machine just killed someone, is this a good idea?
We've commented before that sometimes they don't make very good decisions.
Well, it's not just Steele. You would think that the coach would say, you know what? This machine just killed a guy. Maybe let's have a look at it before we use it again.
Well, in all fairness, though, the operation of those things is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So it could be one of those things where they just rationally thought about it for a second and said, yeah, it's not the machine. There's something else going on here, because those machines are not. Basically, it's just two little tires that spin. The ball runs between the tires and it throws it out. Not a lot to it. Not a lot to go wrong. And yeah, it seems like a kind of a dumb decision, but
it does.
At the same time, it was a pretty safe decision. So yeah.
Well, except that it almost puts him out as well.
Yeah. Although I do have to say his third hit was not very solid. They covered it well, but yeah, you could hear from it. It wasn't a really good hit. But the first two were pretty. Brosnan connected really good.
Yeah. He tells him it's a little tricky. He says, try to meet the ball. Steele looks unconvinced. He picks up the bat. And like you said, the first pitch comes. He does hit it pretty far. Mm-hmm. The coach declares it beginner's luck. But Steele has two more after that. And then all of a sudden, the next pitch comes straight at him. Steele manages to duck, but the bat is destroyed.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I'm thinking that if the bat were destroyed that way, then Kelsey's head would be mush.
Yeah. I don't think the bat would shatter quite that way. I don't know. I mean, if you hit a ball wrong with a bat, there's grain in the wood, and if you hit it with the label side or exactly opposite of that, you're hitting it in the weakest configuration. And that's when bats do break, but they don't shatter in that way. So I'm going to say a little TV magic.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking, because I was thinking that it would crack. Like if it hit it hard enough, it would crack the bat, but not necessarily like shatter the bat.
Yeah.
Like that would be.
Yeah. It would tend to break at the at or near the spot where the ball hit it. And it would be a rough break, but it would be, if you ever took a piece of lath from an old house, pulled it off the wall, and you bend it and it snaps, that's the kind of break that you would typically see out of a bat that is going to be breaking. You're not going to see it shatter like that. So yeah, TV magic.
Yeah, it was a bit. I guess it was dramatic, right? So.
Oh yeah, it is that.
When they look at the ball, they see it is filled with ball bearings, and Steele says they made the ball just off center enough to alter its flight. So that's, I guess, the supposed science behind that. Although,
yeah,
I wonder how they could be sure that the ball would fly right at somebody and not just like spin off crazily in one direction or the other.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't have control over how it went. And see, that's part of the question I have about this whole BBs and the baseball thing, is because there's a core on these things. I think at one time it was cork. I think now it's more of a rubber. And then they're wound with string. So the whole inside of the baseball is basically a solid mass. So you'd have to take that thing out and stitch up the outside cover enough that you could fill it with BBs and that the weight would match. Well, no, it's not going to match. And that it didn't feel like it was, made out of a bunch of BBs in there, like a beanbag type feel, which, you'd feel it. But, you would have no control over how it affected the flight. It would go in a roughly correct direction, but it would do all kinds of weird movements on the ball. So you could not guarantee that it would hit somebody in the head.
Yeah. So we switch here. Laura is following Margie and finds her taking comfort from Sam. Later, she knocks on Margie's door. She's there. I gotta say, Margie and Sam are not exactly subtle.
No.
If you're gonna carry on an illicit affair, maybe don't do it in public. Just a thought.
Well, maybe they figured that they could cover by the facts that, well, I'm his ex-wife and he's my ex-husband, so we're just comforting each other.
Sure.
Yeah.
Laura barges in and demands to know if Margie thinks Ralph's death was an accident. Way to blow your cover, Laura. My God. They were doing so well.
Yeah.
Laura was doing so well.
Yeah.
She's so bad at undercover.
Yep.
The return of undercover Laura.
Yeah.
Margie asks what Laura is suggesting, and she says she isn't suggesting anything. Kind of seems like she is, but okay. She points out that she liked Ralph, and he isn't dead an hour when she sees her playing around with her ex. Margie is surprised she saw them. Why? You were out. Laura says they were hard to miss. Like, you're out in public. Anyway, Margie pours herself a drink as Laura says she's no stool pigeon, but where she comes from, people stand up for their teammates. She asks why she shouldn't call the police and tell them what she knows. Margie turns around and tells her she may be guilty of adultery, but not murder. She says that she and Sam broke off their marriage because they were too much alike, strong-willed, hot-tempered, and argumentative. She said that when she married Ralph, she got stability. Laura adds, and a lot of money. Margie admits that, but it takes more than furs to keep a woman cold on woman warm on a cold Indiana night. And I gotta say, this woman has some balls, pardon my language, for freely admitting, yeah, I like Sam better, but Ralph's rich, so whatevs. That's
well,
okay.
It's probably not unheard of. Yeah. He's got the money. I like him better. I can marry him, get his money, and still have a little on the side. Yeah, it works out because they're doing the same thing too. So, I guess
there must be something wrong with
people.
Me because that I don't think I could ever do that.
Well, no, but there are people that do that, and they don't seem to have in their mind, they don't have a problem with it. They don't see that it's necessarily. They don't see this wrong because it's just an arrangement, as Laura said in one of the episodes, you've got your little Pookie and I've got my little whatever. So,
I guess, but she admits Ralph was good and decent, but his whole life was spent on a game that uses sticks and a little white ball. Laura knowingly says, re-enter Sam Woodman. She says for the time being, then admits she didn't expect to feel the way she does. Laura asks if she was worried Ralph would find out, but she insists his mind was on baseball. She asks what about Vera Woodman. Margie says she doesn't think Vera knew, but that she had nothing to worry about. She grew up poor, and Vera knows that she would never leave the security of Ralph's checkbook for Sam's salary as a teacher. Ouch. Way to just kick teachers where they hurt, And I have to admit, I'm always kind of surprised by digs at how much teachers make, because in Ontario we are paid very well. We're, so anytime I watch a U.S. show where they're like, "Yeah, I'm a teacher. Of course, I've got a second job." I'm like, "But what?" And then I remember, oh yeah, it's different.
Well, there are a lot of people who feel that teachers in the U.S. are underpaid. There are a lot of people who compare their salaries to other positions and say, well, maybe not so much. The thing is, it also varies, widely based on where you're at, what kind of a school you're at, whether it's grade school, high school, whatever. And the other thing is that there are also a lot of benefits that come along with that, things that are included in their salary, if you want to call it that they don't pay for, that other people who might make a similar amount of money would have to pay for. So, if I'm getting something and I'm having to pay for it, and you're making the same amount of money, but you're having to pay for this other thing over here, am I really as bad off as I say? But, then there's the argument of you can't spend benefits. And for example, medical insurance, they say, well, teachers got this great medical insurance. Well, yeah, but what is their deductible? A deductible, that's money that the insurance company isn't going to pay. You have to pay it out of pocket. And if you don't spend all that money in the course of 1 year, the insurance doesn't even kick in. So did that insurance that you maybe got for free or for a very good price, did it really help you a whole lot? No, not really. So there's, it's like so many things. It depends on how you frame it and what you compare it to and how you compare it to, that makes it a difficult discussion, because you can create an argument to prove whatever you want based on the numbers. You know what they say, numbers don't lie. Figures don't lie, but liars figure.
I will freely admit that until you explained what a deductible was, I didn't know. Because I've never had to worry about that. But what I will say is that in Ontario, and other provinces in Canada too, people love to hate teachers because our salaries are very good. We are very well compensated.
In addition, you get that 3-month vacation.
I was going to say there's the 2 months. 2 months. It's not 3. It's only 2. 2 months off. The average, I just Googled it here because I was curious. The average public school teacher salary in the U.S. is apparently $66,000 as of 2022. Average teachers make $60,000 to start with in Canada or in Ontario, and then we move up from there. That's what we call the bottom of the grid. And we have something called the Sunshine List, which is a list that was developed or created in the 90s by the government to basically, or not by the government, I don't know who made it, but somebody created this list.
We don't know where it came from. It just miraculously appeared.
I'll have to look it up. But the purpose of the Sunshine List was to name and shame public sector employees that were making over, at the time they set the amount at $100,000 a year. That was in the 90s when this list was created. So the idea back then was that if you're making over $100,000 and you're in the public sector, you're being overpaid, right? Now, they haven't, I will preface this by saying they have not updated that amount. They have not adjusted that amount of the Sunshine List for inflation. So every year since, teachers started getting onto that list because teachers started making, if they got to the top of the grid, over $100,000 a year. So now every year the list comes out, there's a ton of teachers on it if they've been working for longer than 10 years. And people go on, oh, teachers, they're awful. They're on the Sunshine List. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you haven't updated it. If you were to update it, there wouldn't be any teachers on it because the new updated, adjusted for inflation list would be like $175,000. No teacher makes that. But there are a good number of us that have cracked that $100,000 mark. And I think this year I'll be one of them. So, so anytime I hear them making jokes about a teacher salary, I'm like, okay, I'm not rolling in money like Scrooge McDuck, but I can't afford a house, but I'm a millennial, so that's par for the course, but I'm paid well enough. I always feel that I take that a little personally because I'm like, wait a minute, what's wrong with Sam Woodman's salary? So I don't know. I mean, put it this way, I'm not cooking meth to pay for cancer treatment. So I guess I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
There's that running joke that in Canada, Breaking Bad's plot would have gone like this. You have cancer, sir. We'll get your treatment started right away. The end. That would be the show. But, yeah, so.
Have you considered suicide?
Yeah, pretty much. But Vera Woodman apparently freely admits that Sam's public school teacher salary is not enough to entice her away from Ralph's checkbook. So
yeah, it's a
she
you know,
opens,
even if he's getting paid fairly well, I think it's a matter of comparison. You know,
fair enough. Yeah. Well, I guess if Ralph has enough money, not only to pay for this camp, but to pay for everybody to attend it,
yeah,
or at least the amount of people, and to lend Chubby $250,000 and all the other stuff he's done.
Yeah, he's definitely better off than a teacher.
He's way more. He's making more than me, that's for sure. Although I can't wait for my name to appear there and people to tell me how awful I am. I'm just looking forward to that. Anyway, so I'm just kidding.
We all have our dreams.
She opens the door. If they ever adjust it for inflation, I'll be kicked right back off it. But hey, you know. She opens the door, indicating that it's time for Laura to leave. She goes on to do so, then points out that with Ralph dead, she can have his money and Sam as well. The implication is clear as Margie closes the door. And here's the thing, like, Laura goes in there and essentially, not outright says it, but accuses her of taking out Ralph so that she could be with Sam. Margie does this whole long explanation of like, oh, I may be an adulterer, but I'm not a murderer. I just like Ralph's money, but I wanted... And Laura basically points out, well, you haven't told me any reason why I should believe that you didn't kill this man. In fact, you've only added to your motive.
Yeah.
At this point, you had more of a reason to want him dead.
Well, you know, in kind of a weird, twisted way, that's almost... That almost supports her position, because after all, if I was going to do this, I wouldn't tell you I was going to do this.
Yeah. I wouldn't admit to it. Yeah, maybe. So we've got a scene change where Laura comes into a restaurant where Steele is sitting. He addresses her as Miss Boggs and offers her his tapioca pudding. Ugh, gross. What are they, in a senior's home? Tapioca pudding? Who orders that?
People eat it. People like it. I mean, that's why you can go to the grocery store and buy the little pudding cup containers of tapioca pudding. People buy it.
Do you like tapioca pudding? Did I just insult your love of tapioca pudding?
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of it. My flavor of choice is vanilla. I know you're surprised,
it just
aren't
seems
you?
like a weird thing to have in a restaurant. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but yeah. And if he doesn't want it, why would he order it? Like, why?
Oh, maybe it came with the meal.
Yeah, maybe. It's like coleslaw. I hate coleslaw, but it comes with almost everything. Anyway. Yeah, so she sits down and he tells her that the murder weapon was a baseball doctored with buckshot. He tells her the coach said that anyone could have set it up, as it is always available for practice. Laura points out whoever set this up knew Ralph Kelsey awfully well. He or she knew the video of his botched play would drive him to the batting cage to work up his anger. Steele agrees that makes sense. But then Laura says, unless he was a random victim. Steele tells her, that's what I love about you. You keep narrowing this case down to include everybody.
I think we've heard that line before.
I think so, or something similar to it. There's definitely, he definitely has a few, that's what I love about you, Laura, and then there's, usually some sort of sarcastic comment that follows. Yeah. I'd love to see a compilation of those, plus a compilation of their, step on it, Fred, and don't spare the rubber. Step on it, Fred, and I'll pay the parking or the speeding tickets or whatever. So yeah, he offers her the pudding again as Mildred comes in, and Laura tells Miss Suggsmith to have a seat. She says she hit pay dirt again, saying that 10 years ago, Doc offered Ralph a routine operation that landed him on his back for 2 months. Kelsey sued for malpractice and won, and after that, the doc moved from Muncie to Miami. Steele compliments Mildred, and she says, how about a raise? He offers her the pudding instead, suggesting Laura pay the doctor another visit. He really doesn't want this pudding. He's doing everything he can. Laura, meanwhile, is distracted by Sam and Vera
wait a second. Wait a second. It just occurred to me. You got this thing about tapioca pudding. You don't like it. I'm presuming it's because of the tapioca balls in it. What is it with? Yeah. But I'll bet you a lot of the same people that don't like tapioca pudding like that tea that's got the little balls in it.
Bubble tea?
Whatever it is.
I'm not a fan of that either.
But I'll bet you a lot of people who would never touch tapioca pudding love that tea. It's just like, come on. Yuck. Anyway,
I don't like bubble tea either.
Anyway, as you were saying before I so rudely interrupted.
If you like bubble tea or tapioca pudding, we apologize if we have offended anybody.
No, we don't.
I apologize. Eric doesn't care. Laura, meanwhile, is distracted by Sam and Vera having a very public display of affection. She tells Steele about Sam and Margie, and he wonders if Vera knows that they have rekindled their romance. Laura isn't sure, but points out that Margie doesn't seem to care. Mildred points out that Vera doesn't look like a woman scorned to her, and Laura doesn't get it. Steele says it's almost as confusing as our relationship, which is kind of funny. And I will say this. I criticized the last episode a little bit for being kind of like lacking any sort of, and it doesn't have to be sexual tension, just tension between Laura and Steele. Like it didn't seem to be that there was any chemistry, even though they had dropped the romantic plot line. The banter seemed to sort of be missing, and the back and forth of their working relationship kind of suffered from it. I don't think that's the case in this episode. This episode, they seem to be back to their old back and forth, teasing each other.
I'm going to say
I
that's because this is one of those out of sequence episodes, as evidenced by the ending. But yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and season 3. And somebody pointed out in the Facebook group that this was their highest rated season. And that kind of baffles me, not because it was a bad, I don't think season 3 is bad, but the order they aired it in would have frustrated people, I think, given that it seems to ping pong them back and forth in a way that doesn't really make any sense. And I get that it was episodic and people weren't maybe tuning in every single week, but I mean, look what they did to Firefly. Right? Airing the episodes out of order so that you couldn't really get connected to the characters in any real way until they canceled the show. And then it was like, hey, wait a minute, this was getting good. What happened?
Well, I think in the case of Steele, it might be a matter of just progression of audience, because, they started out the first season.
That's true. Yeah.
They were successful enough that they got a second season. And then, with a lot of these shows, as you go on into the second and third and maybe fourth seasons, you tend to pick up a larger audience simply because A, more people are aware of it, B, more people are talking about it. It's getting more press. The actors in the show are getting a lot of publicity. And so it brings some attention to them and to the show. And so people tend to watch the show maybe more than they did the first couple of seasons. And then, of course, after it reaches a certain point, it starts dropping off, which is why shows get canceled. So, I think it could just be that's just the nature of the ebb and flow of the audience growth.
Right. Yeah. We get a switch here. We're back in the exercise room, and now Chubby Bitterman is on that weird bike, covered in sweat. He's gasping. Sounds like he's not doing well.
This too.
Yeah, I got a number of them.
We'll get to it at the end of this. Yours? Well, okay, we'll go ahead and do it now. We find out later that his shoe is caught in the pedal because the stirrup has been bent.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait a second. I thought that the whole thing about these was that you were pedaling the bike, and then as you were pedaling the bike, that caused the handlebar motion to go up and down, and that was doing the thing. To say that his foot got caught in the stirrup and he couldn't get out, and that's why this thing kept going, means that it's powered, which means what exercise are you getting out of it? I mean, that's like, I love riding my motorcycle, but I guarantee you I'm not getting exercise out of that like I would if I was on a bicycle. So what's the point? So what's the point of this thing?
I'm kind of wondering. I'm sort of wondering, like you said, right? If the motion of the pedal is what moves you forward, why not just stop pedaling?
Yeah, exactly. Except that the purpose is that it's powered. We find that out later when they say to unplug it. So the machine is doing the exercising for you.
Yeah.
You're not getting any. I mean, that's like, no.
It's like those scooters. I see them all the time. Those like two-wheeled scooters that are powered now. You don't even have to push them with your foot.
Yeah.
And I think, what what's the point of buying? I get it. You're lazy and don't want to walk, but like, it's just.
Yeah, well, and this is an exercise bike for somebody who doesn't want to actually do an exercise bike thing because it's doing it all for you because it's powered by an electrical motor.
Designed to destroy your back.
so many things about this episode that just you scratch your head and think, I don't get it.
Well, and then my next question is this tub thing that the doc is lowering himself into. It's not a hot tub. What is this? Because it just seems like, is it for his feet? Like he's lowering himself into this weird contraption, and he comments on how strange it is for a doctor to find out about muscles he didn't know he had, and invites them to sit down and enjoy the agony. Have you ever seen anything like this? Because I haven't.
I think it's supposed to be kind of like a whirlpool type thing that, there's the hot tub, which is more of a communal thing. And then there's this thing, which is a one person, maybe designed to help relax your muscles after you've had a hard workout. It seems kind of weird, but because you'd think that a hot tub would basically do the same thing, but maybe this is more directed and more concentrated than a hot tub would be. And plus, you don't have the distraction of a gal in a bikini sitting next to you and your foot finding its way to weird, wonderful places.
Anyway, Laura gets right to the point and asks if he heard the rumor going around. When Gridley picks up on the bait, Steele says that Ralph was murdered. Laura adds that she knows that about the falling out that they had years ago. The doc immediately gets defensive and says that malpractice suit was ancient history. He admits he hated Ralph's guts for a few years because he had to move to Florida. I mean, that's fair. I wouldn't want to move to Florida either. So I apologize to anyone who lives in Florida. I am just kidding. But that the reunion would be the chance to bury the hatchet. He laughs nervously, calling it a figure of speech. And maybe not the best figure of speech, but so he says that if anyone had a reason to kill Ralph, it was Chubby. He tells him that Chubby borrowed $250,000 on a handshake and lost every dime. Laura picks up on that, as does Steele, concluding that if Ralph is dead, there's no money he has to repay. The doc tells him they catch on quick and gets out of the water. Steele turns the contraption off and calls it a first-rate performance. Laura agrees that he could be a first-rate liar trying to divert suspicion to Chubby. Speaking of Chubby, he's getting louder and louder on this bike. Steele turns around and says he's doing great, calling it the best Jerry Lee Lewis impression he's ever heard.
No, not
Chubby
Jerry Lee Lewis, Jerry Lewis.
Oh, is there a difference? Who's Jerry Lewis?
Yeah. I can't believe you said that.
Oh, okay.
Jerry Lee Lewis was a rockabilly
singer.
rocker.
Yeah, I know who he was.
Yes, singer. Jerry Lewis was half of Martin and Lewis. He was a comic.
Oh,
okay. Fact,
sorry. Yes, I do know who he was. I just don't know.
And in fact, Jerry Lewis is credited with having invented the Steadicam.
Yes. Okay, I do know who you're talking about. My brain is not braining.
You threw in that extra word there.
Yeah. Chubby manages to call out for help. Laura realizes that's not an act. They race over and unplug the bike. Again, weird. They pull him off, carry him into the showers where they sit him down and turn on the water. Steele is trying to get Chubby to say something when Laura runs back to the bike and sees that his shoe is clipped to the pedal. I have a lot of questions about this bike. A, that he couldn't just stop pedaling. As you said, that means obviously the bike was powering his movements, but also, I don't know about you, but I can slip my foot out of my shoe if I need to. Like it's never tied so tightly that my foot is trapped. I guess if it was moving, it might be harder, but I don't know. It just seems like if you undid the laces, you could maybe pull your shoe out.
Well, yeah, except that, if he had it tied enough that he couldn't slip his shoe out or slip his foot out of the shoe, he would have to reach down and untie the laces. But the way he was going back and forth and that thing was throwing him up and down, up and down, up and down, he probably wouldn't have had a chance to grab the laces and untie it. So,
also, I mean, Ralph's dead. Mission accomplished. Did they just forget all the traps they set, or Is this to kind of keep
Oh, I
diverting?
forgot
Like,
about that one.
Do they want to take more people out? Like, I don't understand why they're still going. Like, they've got what they wanted.
Steele references it later when he talks about the ABC murders.
Yeah.
Because what you do is you create this mass of accidents, incidents, attempted murders, so that you're trying to connect them all. You're trying to find the common denominator and who would want all these people dead. And really, the rest of them are all just a smokescreen. So, yeah, we still got some more gags left. Yeah, some more people get hurt. Yeah, what's the big deal? It just serves to help confuse things more. So, yeah. Let them go.
Ouch. Laura eventually pulls the shoe out as Steele and Chubby come back inside. She asks if he's okay. He says he is and that he just couldn't get his foot out. He tells him he just needs a long nap and walks away. Laura tells Steele the stirrup was bent and that whoever put their foot in next wasn't getting it out. So, I guess if it's bent, it's going to trap your shoe, but yeah.
Trap the shoe, but yeah, depending on where it's bent, how it catches the shoe. Again, like you said, if your shoe is not tightly tied and you can slip your foot out, you could still get your foot out. But I would think in this case, it was just too tightly tied and he couldn't reach down to untie it. So
later that night, they're walking together outside, and Laura says that it looks as if someone's trying to kill off all the members of their union. Steele quotes, "And then there were none," to which Laura tells him she remembers. She adds that the only person who would have had a motive to kill them all was Ralph Kelsey, and he's dead. She then says, unless Ralph was the intended victim all along and the killer masked it with a series of accidents, of which Chubby was only his latest. Steele then mentions, as you said, the alphabet murders for the second time, because he's mentioned this particular film twice, same with And Then There Were None, which Laura says she knows that one too. And he says the problem is how best to proceed. Steele says they can rule Chubby out, and Laura disagrees, saying that he might be a good actor and a bicycle incident, while harrowing, would hardly prove fatal. I don't know if that's true. I mean, if you're in bad enough shape and your heart gives out while you're like, if you're stuck on a machine like that for long enough, it could kill you for sure.
Well, certainly. I mean, if you got a weak heart or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if there's
I can see how that would happen.
Issue or blood pressure problem, like, or if you're like me, a severe asthmatic.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I was going to say,
I'm watching him going,
I'm not sure blood pressure would, but
minutes, like that would definitely take out a severe asthmatic for sure. So yeah, I definitely think it could be fatal, although you'd have to be on the bike a while, but still.
Yeah, and I would think that for somebody who's an asthmatic, it would take even longer than somebody who maybe had a heart condition. I don't know enough about asthmatics to know, but I would think that it would take a while to get to the point where you couldn't breathe.
It depends on the severity of the asthma, because like I barely survived my childhood in and out of hospital, and like I joked about not being able to watch E.T., but the scene where he's got E.T. in the tents, like when you're having a severe asthma or croup attack, they put you in this tent and they pump it with steroids to basically open your lungs, open your airways, because at that point your airways are shut. You can't get air in. So again, depending on how serious it is, like if you're having a serious attack, you're not breathing. You're taking in nothing, right? So I mean, like my asthma is not that bad anymore. It's still very bad though. So you put me on a bike long enough and that would definitely kill me. I joke to my students that if they see me run, they need to run too, because something is chasing me. It's the only reason I would be doing it. Even then I'm going to stop and evaluate my options. So, yeah. So she jokes at poor Steele. He says, can they rule anyone out as a suspect? And she jokes that they can rule her out. She enters her room and stops dead. Steele asks her what's wrong. She tells him that someone's been in her room. He asks how she can tell, and she says she didn't need her wallet, so she left it in the back of the bureau drawer. She then picks it up off the top of the bureau to show him it's been moved. He suggests she might have made a mistake, but she points out that her compulsions are an endless source of amusement to him, so it should come as no surprise that she always checks and double checks her motel room before she leaves it. Is this a compulsion? I would think everybody would do that.
Well,
Maybe it's
that
just
may
me,
not be
but
a compulsion, but I think she's referring to compulsions in a more general sense of her behaviors that might be viewed as compulsive. You know, one thing that you do, I always put my wallet in the back of the drawer when I leave it. That wouldn't be a compulsion, but if you combine that with a bunch of other behaviors that are, well, I do this and it has to be this way, and no, the meat has to be at 7:00 on my plate, and then the mashed potatoes are, you know, at this, and the corn and the vegetables are over here. And I don't know anybody who does do that, but
me either. But it was very specific as an example. So,
so yeah, I mean, if you have a bunch of things like that you're doing, that could be considered compulsive. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess in terms of her checking and double checking her hotel room, I do that because I don't like the idea that a stranger is going to come. Like, we always put the sign on the door that says, "Don't clean this room," because I don't care if they change the sheets when we're the ones sleeping in them. It does not matter. And I don't like the idea of somebody coming into the room while I'm not there and my stuff being there. I know that, I mean, they're, you know,
people at motels lose things because the house cleaning staff comes in and says, "Ooh, I like that."
Yeah, like I'm always worried about that. So I would think this, and given her job, that would be a very smart thing to do, to check and recheck your hotel room when you leave it. So, yeah. Yeah, so she says she always checks and double checks the motel room before she leaves it. She looks through her wallet to make sure everything's there. He asks if anything's missing. She says no. And then he asks if she's thinking what he is thinking. She says that someone grew suspicious, snuck up to the room to check her out, and through plain carelessness left the wallet out. She holds up her PI license to show him. She tells him if the killer is the intruder, he's onto them. Steele says, not to be unsympathetic, but what do you mean, us? I do like that statement. He's like, wait a minute. No. He's onto you.
What do you mean we, Kimosabi?
Yeah, exactly. She pulls out a photo of her wallet with the two of them standing in front of the Remington Steele sign on the door of their office. That's sweet that she keeps a photo of them in her wallet, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's cute.
Yeah, it's nice.
But yeah, unfortunately, it means...
remembrances of a better time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it means that poor Steele is also a target now. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we see a light being turned on and a hand with a black glove grabbing Steele's bat marked St. James. The person takes a saw and begins to saw the bat in half. Would they have their own bats? Would they, or wouldn't they?
I don't know if they necessarily would at the fantasy camp, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because in real baseball, professional baseball, even in the minor leagues, yes, players have their own bats.
Well, I assume that, but it just, if different sessions are in residence every week, I guess they just tape the name to the bat, but it just seems odd that they would assign you a bat.
Well, they could have brought their own bats. They could have brought their own bats too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I could see how in a fantasy camp like this they'd say, okay, you know, here's a bunch of bats, different lengths, different weights. Pick the one that works for you. Yeah, and then we'll just put your name across the back of it. That way you know you always get the same bat. So yeah.
We get a scene change. We're in the locker room. The coach is giving them a pep talk. It's their last day. They get to play a game against the pros that they grew up with. He tells them this is their chance to show what they learned and tells them not to grandstand for their wives and friends in the audience. He then says Sam wants to say a few words. So Sam says that they had a tradition at East Lake High, gets them to put their hands in the center, and he says Ralph went out the way he always wanted to, with a bat in his hand. And he also says that wherever Ralph is, he would want them to play the way they did 20 years ago. They all say something emotional for Ralph, and then Sam yells, "Let's go Wildcats!" And they all run out yelling, leaving Laura and Steele behind. Laura watches them go, somewhat devastated, saying, "It's not exactly murderer's row." And Steele adds that nevertheless, one of those men is a killer. The coach tells him he hopes they have something up their sleeve because the media is already on him about the safety. Laura assures him the case will be history by the end of the game, and the coach seems relieved to hear it. He walks away. Steele asks what she is saying. She says that she works best under pressure and heads out onto the field. She has nothing. I do love this.
No.
She's just like, yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. We're totally going to do it. It's fine.
Got nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Steele asks if he's found anything. And Mildred, where am I? I skipped ahead, didn't I? Yeah. He walks away and Steele asks what she's saying. She tells him she works best under pressure. Okay, yeah, I got that. Laura assures him that she has a plan, and Mildred finds them as they approach the field. Steele asks if she's found anything. Mildred says, bupkis. He says, is that another baseball term? And Laura hands Mildred.
I got an issue.
We
already had this term used. Steele already knows the term because Mildred used it before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know. If this is a first-time writer, he might not have remembered that, I guess. But,
I guess.
Yeah. Laura hands Mildred a key, telling her that Crowley gave her a master key and to go through all the rooms to see if she can find anything that ties anyone to the murderers. Or to the murders, sorry. Then we get a switch. This is where I'm going to need your help, because, there's all kinds of baseball going on in the scene, and I'm going to mess it up. On the field.
Okay.
I'm just going to call them the green team, and I don't know. You'll have to, say if you know who these people are, if any of them are other pros, because I don't recognize them, obviously.
Well, I am not enough of a baseball technical person that I would necessarily know. I don't think that any of them probably are.
Okay.
But,
well, I guess for the purpose of the story, they're supposed to be, but yeah. So, one of the members of the green team is up to bat. Laura is yelling out baseball things again. The pitch is thrown, and he hits it. She catches it, throws it. Is it to first base? Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Steele runs up to her, congratulates her on the play. He asks her what her plan is. She tells him the killer is onto them and likely feels they're closing in on him. She starts to say more, but then runs back to her position, tells him later. She resumes, kind of yelling, encouragement, blah, blah, blah. As the next pitch is thrown, it gets hit. Steele holds up his glove to shield himself and accidentally catches it, which I like. I thought that was funny.
Yes.
The batter is out, and Steele looks pleased with himself as everyone congratulates him. Laura comes back to him and says that the killer is bound to come after them. They just have to catch him before he succeeds.
Now, this sounds like a plan Steele would cook up.
It really does.
You know?
It really does.
Oh, all we have to do is catch the criminal. Well, yeah, but how are we going to do that? Well, we're just going to catch him.
We're just going to not die. It's that simple.
No.
We're just...
I need a plan.
Well, Steele, to his credit, looks rather shocked, going, "That's the plan? We're just going to be sitting ducks?" Laura moves back into position as another pitch is thrown. It's hit, and this time the doc catches it, and the batter is out. They leave the field with Laura congratulating the doc on his catch. Steele tells her that plan is a bloody death trap, and she tells him it was all she could come up with, and that he needs to watch his back, as any one of the old Wildcats could be their man. They go into the dugout. Laura high fives, pretending to be one of the team. One of the team members goes up to bat, and one of the green. Now one of these. Okay, so I know that Whitey Ford and Mickey Mantle start giving each other friendly ribbing. And I honestly, until I see the backs of their shirts, don't know which one's which. So forgive me here. But someone yells, "Come on, Grandma, let's see some heat." This is funny. Steele, terrified now, is sitting all the way in the corner, just looking real scared.
Yeah, that was Mantle yelling, and that was Whitey Ford out on the mound.
Okay, cool. Thank you. See, this is why you should be doing this episode. This is not good.
No, I'm the color commentary. Anyway, yeah, I like that Steele sitting in the corner. It's paranoid as all get out.
Yeah. He doesn't want to move. He's like, nope. And the doc comes over and asks him what's wrong, and Steele tells him he finds meditation a great comfort during a game. Doc thinks it's nerves, and he puts some chewing tobacco in his hand, or in his mouth, as part of his education. I'm sorry, this is gross. I get that it's a part of the sport. I just can't.
Well, there were a couple of ball players that agreed with you. Back in the 1970s, the Portland Mavericks, which was a independent team in the Pacific Coast League. Two of their players didn't do chewing tobacco, but they invented Big League Chew, which was shredded bubble gum that you could use.
I remember that.
Put in your mouth like chew. So yeah.
Gum is better though. Gum doesn't mean you're spitting crud out onto the ground and like, ugh.
That's true. That's true.
I just think it's super gross. And even Steele looks disgusted. He still puts it in his mouth, which if he's so paranoid about people trying to kill him, I wouldn't be putting anything in my mouth that they hand me. That's just me. Like, we see another
he didn't
pitch.
Put it in his mouth. Doc
That's
put it
true.
in
He
his
just kind of
mouth,
shoved it in there. We see another pitch get thrown and the batter misses. Chubby brings Laura some water, which she eagerly accepts at first, but then realizes it could be poison and throws it behind her. Slats gets a hit but doesn't make it to base, and Laura tells St. James to spit out your cud because they have 3 out. They go back out there. At bat, which one is it? Which one's at bat here? Because I've got
just
literally
some
in my...
miscellaneous...
Oh, I thought it was either...
No, they're off to the side talking.
Oh, okay, because I have Whitey Ford / Mickey Mantle tells Whitey Ford / Oh, okay. Yeah, they're talking to each other. Okay, I didn't know which one was which. One of them tells the other, because literally in my notes it says Whitey Ford / Mickey Mantle tells Whitey Ford / Mickey Mantle, look at that, he couldn't hit the ball if it was on a tee. Which I do like you know who they remind me of? They remind me of the 2 Muppets. The grumpy old Muppets that like sit in the...
Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah,
Statler and Waldorf.
People. They remind me of them.
Well, okay. I'm going to do something I shouldn't do here. I don't know if you can see it because I got the blur on. I've got...
Oh, I see.
You can't see it very well. My granddaughter gave those to me. You should never hang anything off your mic because it makes noise, but it's a Kermit, a Fozzie, and a Gonzo.
Nice.
Because I love the Muppets.
The Muppets are awesome, right? Like, you can't not love the Muppets. So
yeah,
that's who they remind
Disney
me.
Apparently doesn't because they destroyed them.
I know.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, Disney, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, only the ball does get hit and the runner goes for it. Steele fails to catch it, and then one of them, either Whitey Ford or Mickey Mantle, says he couldn't pick the ball up if it came with a handle. I do love that. Then I know Mantle goes up to bat because I saw his shirt. A pitch is thrown, and the umpire calls it a strike. Mantle says he's seen potatoes with better eyes. I do love that line. Yeah, so another pitch, and he swings. Whitey yells that his granddaughter can swing better. They must have been having a blast. Like, this whole... everything. I wonder... Yeah, they must have just been having a great time. Another pitch, and Mantle knocks it out of the park. The score is now 4-0 for the All-Stars. Ford comes up to bat. He misses it, tells the ump he's getting a bit old for this kind of stuff. Another good hit and a fumble on Steele's part, and the runners are sliding into home. It's now 8-0. Couple more good hits puts them up to 14-0. Eventually they come off the field, and the coach tells Steele he's up and Laura's on deck. He urges them to hit something and make it a dignified disaster.
Considering what this is, it's just a fantasy game with a bunch of old-time ball players and a bunch of wannabes and never were's.
Yeah.
Crowley seems to be taking the game a lot more seriously than
really does.
You might expect, I suppose. But, on the other hand, it is baseball. So it's, what's that old saying? It's not like it's a matter of life and death. It's more important. Yeah.
Well, I'm guessing every session he gets, he's going up against the All-Stars, right? So maybe there's a pride element.
He'd like to beat them once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. He wants to coach one team that wins. Steele grabs his bat. Laura's warming up when Mildred approaches and gestures to talk to her. Laura goes over to her, and Mildred says she didn't find anything specific, but she pulls some things from the waste paper baskets that might be useful. Steele misses the first pitch, which the umpire calls it a ball. He tells Ford to give him something he can hit, and Mantle yells that his niece has better stuff. Laura notices a receipt for a type of putty that can be very volatile when it dries and asks whose room it was from. Mildred can't remember as there were so many. Come on, Mildred! Like, she gave you a key to search the rooms. Like, you got to remember where you got it.
Well, she's a bureaucrat. This is her life.
Yeah, this is
keeping track of things. I mean,
and she had to know that was sort of the point, searching the room so that you know which room has the evidence in it.
Why are you searching the rooms if you're not going to be concerned about what you're finding and where?
Yeah. So yeah, it was a fail on Mildred's part, but Laura notices Vera Woodman very carefully leaving the field or leaving the bleachers, and standing behind them as Steele attempts to hit something. She's got to have X-ray eyesight because
in my notes. Are we really supposed to believe that Laura could see a cut mark on Steele's bat from 20 feet or so away?
Yeah.
Come on.
And I mean, wouldn't somebody have noticed the bat has been cut all the way around, even if it's been glued back on?
Not necessarily. I mean, they're kept stored end down, handle up in a rack, so you wouldn't necessarily see it.
True.
Unless somebody caught sight of it as you pulled it out of the rack and was walking up to the home plate. So
yeah,
it's entirely conceivable that nobody would have noticed. But
Laura,
then for somebody to notice it from 20 feet away,
she cringes, but thankfully he misses. She runs up to him and tells him not to swing at any more pitches, adding that she'll explain why later. He listens and gets a strike, but isn't happy about it. He tells her he worked hard on his swing. He actually cares now. He's like, I worked hard on this. I don't want to go down in defeat with the bat on my shoulder. She tells him to take a look at the top of the bat and not to make it look obvious. But then she just says it's loaded with explosives, so he doesn't need to. He gets the point, though, and goes back up to the plate looking quite terrified. And I got a feel for him here because, even if you're intending to miss... Yeah.
Habit, the impulse, the ball's coming, I want to swing at it.
Exactly, right? So he's standing there, he misses, but the umpire declares it ball 2. Steele argues that it looked like a strike, and he's told to get in there and hit. The next pitch is another strike, and Steele thanks the umpire profusely before going back to Laura, who tells him that she has a plan. He says he can't wait. So they then make it look as if they're switching bats, and Steele goes back up to the dugout, loudly announcing that she wanted to try his bat. She pretends to practice with it, and then declares it too heavy and throws it towards the dugout. I know they toss the bat when they hit it, but are people routinely in the habit of just whipping the bat across the field or across the?
Well,
I get why she did it.
I mean, I can see where something like that would happen, particularly since all the rest of the players on the team are in the dugout. There's very little chance of actually hitting somebody. But I mean, in that situation, you would probably just say, "Hey, bring me my other bat," and then hand it back to them. But yeah, I mean, you look at professional ball players; they swing the bat, they hit the ball, and then they throw the bat 10, 15 feet. Some of them do.
It's true.
So, I mean, that sort of thing does happen.
So she lobs it into the air towards the dugout. Sam freaks and dives to the ground as Laura's bat hits the ground totally harmless. Steele tells him they faked switching bats, and Laura yells, "That's the man who murdered Ralph Kelsey." Vera gets in what looks to be a golf cart and drives onto the field. Sam jumps on and they begin to escape, although I don't know how fast they could really go in that thing, but whatever. They attempt to chase.
I didn't look up speed of golf carts.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think they can probably go like 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, maybe. Either way, Steele throws the bat in front of the cart. I would think this would be extremely dangerous, especially if he didn't throw it far enough.
Yeah, sure. But it's TV. We can get away with it.
And it falls right in front of the cart. The explosion stops the cart, obviously. They dive out, and Steele calls it a grand slam, which... Wrong sport yet again.
No.
Oh, there's grand slam. I was thinking tennis. Tennis has grand slam, too.
Yeah. In baseball, a grand slam is when you hit a home run with all three batters or all three bases occupied by runners. So you've got somebody on first, second, and third. You hit a home run, that's a grand slam because you just knocked in 4 runs.
But... Okay. Yeah. Anyway, we've got to switch back to the office. Mildred is shocked that it was Sam and Vera the whole time. Laura explains that Sam was going to divorce Vera, remarry Margie, and get her out of the way so they could enjoy Ralph's fortune. Yikes. Mildred says she will take the Irish sweepstakes for her millions. Irish sweepstakes? Huh?
Yeah, I didn't look it up, but I'll do it real quick. Let's see. Irish sweepstakes, one of the largest lotteries promoted internationally. It was authorized by the Irish government in 1930 to benefit Irish hospitals. Let's see. During its 57 years of existence, it derived more revenue from the United States than any other country. Basically, you would buy tickets and you paid so much, and a good portion of the money went toward a prize, and then a portion of it went toward the hospitals. And so they would draw the winning number, and you got the money that was allocated from the prize. It's kind of like a split the pot, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah. So here's something really interesting, because I just Googled it too.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently this was a really questionable lottery. It says here, usually other lotteries are intended to fund good works which are not funded or inadequately funded out of the public tax pot. They are a way of making minor philanthropists out of citizens who are not addicted to supporting charitable works. This person who wrote this said, when I reached my 3rd birthday and the tragedy of the dirty 30s was beginning, the Irish government decided that it could alleviate the desperate situation of the country's hospitals with a lottery. The Irish Hospital Sweepstakes was born. It was a nefarious enterprise in Britain, the United States, and Canada, all of which had blue laws. Blue laws were intended to supplant the conscience of the individual with the legal pronouncements of the state. In North America and Britain, lotteries and other forms of gambling were declared to be immoral and were therefore illegal. In Canada, a large portion of the population considered this legislative meddling to be a Protestant conspiracy. Our Roman Catholic citizens could make a list of their misdeeds, confess them to a priest, and receive absolution, and then be ready to start the next week sinning with a clean slate. Protestants didn't have such a handy arrangement. They had to be good all the time. Having been a Protestant all the days of my life, I know how hard this can be. The Irish sweepstakes funneled money into Irish hospitals until 1934, when government leaders decided the lottery hadn't been one of their better ideas. It was taken over by a few canny entrepreneurs who, while pretending to raise money for hospitals, were stuffing the proceeds into their own pockets. The Irish government didn't interfere with this arrangement because the money that rascals were raising was being invested into job-making industries. The scheme ended officially in 1987, although the legislation legalizing lotteries in Britain, the United States, and Canada in the 60s had made a big cut in the take. The Irish sweepstakes was illegal in Canada for over 30 years. There wasn't much hope of winning anything. Completed tickets were often intercepted at customs and destroyed. The money was also intercepted and turned into the federal government. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I just learned.
A lot of these types of things over the years, historically, I think have been questionable. I mean, there's a little bit for the prize, a little bit, and I'm sure that they gave a little bit to the so-called charity that they were supposedly raising money for. But yeah, there was, I'm sure, a lot of fancy bookkeeping that kept a lot of money hidden for people's pockets. It's kind of like, well, I don't know if he's saying this or not. You go into these places like McDonald's and such, and you want to round up to the dollar to support this and that and the other thing. It's like, is this legit or not? Really, there's so many of them doing it. At some point, you got to start scratching your head and saying, can they all be legit? I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Either way, that's what Mildred's relying on. Steele suggests a double feature to take their mind off of things, and Laura asks what's playing. He tells her Fear Strikes Out and Pride of the Yankees. That's cute. She laughs and says she might have a baseball convert on her hands. He tells her that he might give her a few pointers on making contact. She asks if they're still talking baseball, and he says that he is sure they would get around to it eventually. He says, batter up, Miss Holt. She says, batter up, Mr. Steele. So this must be what you were referring to when you mentioned that, this is supposed to be during the freeze, and yet they're teasing each other as they normally would. Now, you could argue that it's just innuendo and that the relationship is still professional or whatever.
Professional
but,
only?
It doesn't feel that way.
That doesn't sound like professional. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No,
definitely doesn't feel that they're still in the freeze. So, yeah. Speaking of freeze, it freezes, and that's the end of the episode. I apologize to any baseball fans for my mangling of pretty much all of it, but
you would have been forgiven except for that Buffy reference.
I had to do it. So.
I know you did. It's
anything else that you wanted to add?
Thing.
I like this episode.
No.
It's this was a fun one.
I've kind of got mixed feelings about this one because there's some things in this thing that are just so implausible as to be ridiculous. But I do love the episode in this in a sense that it's got a really good plot. I mean, it's constantly, you're constantly eliminating everybody to be a suspect, but everybody's a suspect. You keep bringing them back into the pool. It's got a lot of really good misdirection. It's not bad misdirection. It's really well constructed misdirection. So, if they could have fixed the improbabilities, it would have been a much better episode. But I think it's a great episode.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think it's just fun. I'm cool hand waving the accidents because the rest of it is enjoyable. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's pretty much the end of the episode. On the website, www.SteeleWatching.com, we've got show notes, links to Amazon, US and Canada, merch, links to where you can subscribe and help support us, and all sorts of other stuff like that. There's also our social media resources and links, such as
the official Steele Watching Facebook page, the official Twitter and Instagram, and links to the Facebook Steele Watchers fan group, where so much stuff happens.
Indeed. Bets are made. Singing takes place. Top 5 episodes are listed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. We won't talk about that.
Anyway, what's the next episode?
Blue-Blooded Steel. Again, it's back in those European episodes. I seem to be getting those.
Yeah, you did. You got another one.
And it's funny because they keep alternating. It's a European episode, a U.S. episode, a European episode. So I'm sure that was done intentionally for some reason, just to kind of break it up so it's not all European episodes all at once. But winds up with me getting them all.
Yeah, their passports get a workout this season, that's for sure.
That's true. That's true.
So,
anyway,
all right.
Okay. I've got nothing else.
We've reached the end. So, thanks for listening, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. Eric and Sara here. Just a quick announcement to let you know that, yes, we do appreciate everyone who listens, participates, and supports the podcast in whatever way you do. But we wanted to give an extra thank you to those who are so graciously giving to be monthly financial supporters.
We are making live streams of our recording sessions available to anyone who is a monthly financial supporter. So not only can you watch us live as we record our podcast episodes, you will be getting access to the raw, behind-the-scenes, unedited version of episodes before they get officially released.
And Sara, does that include our mistakes and screw-ups and our humiliating? Yes,
every single one of them.
Every single one of them, yes. So again, this is just an extra thank you to those who are going above and beyond. But whether you choose to become a monthly financial supporter or not, we still love you. We want to say we thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your feedback.
If you want to become a monthly financial supporter, please visit our website at www.SteeleWatching.com to sign up.